Yeah, hey, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Well, good evening, actually. I make this mistake sometimes. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're doing good. We're going. I'm alive a little early because I have a show scheduled today at 6. I've invited some guests, and I'm happy to talk to them. I'm excited to talk about or talk to people who are either not voting, sitting out, or voting third party this election season. I just want to kind of pick their brains as to why, talk to them about their thought processes, and kind of discuss voting, electoralism, the importance of it, and things like that. And it'll be a fun discussion. It will. So keep in mind that's on the docket. But I went live a little bit early today because I wanted to address just briefly, and I'm hoping to talk to an individual on Twitter about this, or an individual I've been going back and forth on Twitter about this tomorrow, but we'll see if they can. The Arlington Cemetery kerfuffle, the controversy that has recently dropped about Trump giving a campaign ad or doing a campaign ad in the Arlington Cemetery. For those of you who don't know, the Arlington Cemetery is for veterans, people who have died in foreign wars, and it is exclusive. It's controlled by the Army, and they have strict rules and regulations about what can and cannot be done within there, right? And there's been some allegations, some things have come to light. It is a developing story, right? So keep that in mind. But I had some thoughts on it, and I wanted to share those thoughts before we get into the non-voter third party thing. We talked earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, about Trump, JD Vance, Tim Walz, and respect for the military and support for the military, support for our troops, support for people in the armed services, for those who wear the uniform. This is simply another example of Trump putting himself and his wants and desires before anyone else. Let's read the story from CNN, and I'll give my thoughts on that. So here's what CNN has reported. This was a story that was reported first in NPR. It came to light that there was an altercation, a physical altercation of some sort at the cemetery during the event. And since then, it has come to light that when Trump came to do his campaign ad, basically, at the event, to go in and to do a photo shoot of him, a TikTok actually, of him going to the graves and talking shit on Kamala, basically. One of the people who runs the Arlington Cemetery, one of their caretakers, came in and told them to stop. It was against their rules. They weren't allowed to do political and campaign activities on the cemetery. It wasn't for that. Well, apparently, Trump's cronies pushed him down or pushed her down. I'm not exactly sure. And there was a physical altercation. They did not press charges, but it was reported. And the Army, the U.S. Army, not the Veterans Affairs, not the VFW, none of that. The U.S. Army itself has issued a statement. Let's read, okay? Oh, we a little adjusted a little bit for you guys. Okay. The U.S. Army has issued a stark rebuke of former President Donald Trump's presidential campaign over the incident on Monday at Arlington National Cemetery, saying in a statement on Thursday, that's today, ladies and gentlemen, that participants in the ceremony were made aware of federal laws regarding political activity at the cemetery and abruptly pushed aside an employee of the cemetery. Participants in the August 26th cemetery and the subsequent Section 60 visit were made aware of federal laws, Army regulations, and DoD policies, which clearly prohibit political activities on cemetery grounds. An ANC, Arlington National Cemetery, employee who attempted to ensure adherence to these rules was abruptly pushed aside, the Army spokesperson said in the statement on Thursday. Section 60 is an area in the cemetery largely reserved for the graves of those who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. They continue. The incident was unfortunate And it is also unfortunate that the ANC employee and her professionalism, so it's her at best, has been unfairly attacked. Because of course it has, gang. Because again, if you stand up to Trump in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what level of service you've served, what you've done for the country. It does not matter. They will viciously attack you. They will viciously seek you out, attack you, denigrate you, call you the worst names imaginable, make memes of them killing your children, of Trump killing your children, as they did to David French. This happens over and over and over and over again. People have argued with me, oh, well, he has a First Amendment right to do this. He has a First Amendment right to take these photos and things like that. Maybe so, but if I'm at a gravesite, a cemetery, and the people who work at the cemetery come up to me and say, hey, this is disrespectful. You probably shouldn't do this. This is against our rules and regulations. You know what I do, and pretty much any reasonable American does, someone who respects our troops, respects the Army, respects its traditions, they say, okay, and they comply. The fact that Trump did not comply and instead physically, I don't think he did it directly, to be clear, but his staff physically pushed this woman out, who was just trying to do her job, out of the way so that they could, again, make this campaign ad, just tells you all you really need to know about where Trump's priorities lies and what exactly his respect for the military entails. This man does not respect the military at all. And even worse, all those people who claim to respect the armed forces coming out and defending this is indefensible. It's simply not. And people are like, well, Biden has done this before. Biden had a campaign ad before. Well, he got permission from the ANC, right? And the photographs that were used were people at the ANC who actually photographed the event. There's a difference here. These are not the same thing. And as I've seen, these ads did not denigrate his political opponent. They simply showed him honoring the dead at the service. And if that was all Trump had done, and he just wanted to have pictures of him putting a wreath in front of these things, and that's it, fair enough. But that's not all this was. Let's not pretend it wasn't. There was, again, there's strict rules and regulations here, and you can disagree with them. That's fine. But it just shows the kind of person you are. Like, again, I will protect your right to free speech to call people slurs. You can call people slurs. You can do that. I could judge you for it. I don't think you should be arrested or fined, but I could absolutely judge you for it. Okay? And if in the process of trying to make a campaign ad, you were at a gravesite meant to honor the dead, and you decide that rather than respect the wishes of the people who care for the dead, to care for their cemeteries, from the Army itself, who owns that cemetery, and for their rules and regulations, if you decide that your little campaign ad is more important than that, you don't support the military. You don't. Trump supports Trump. That's it. That's all it ever was. And this poor lady, she didn't file charges because if she did, they would ruin her. They would make an example of her, as they have so many before. This is a pattern of behavior that I just needed to talk about a little bit. Hopefully, the gentleman who's been disagreeing with me on Twitter will agree to our Friday debate on this, and we have a discussion. But yeah, I think this is just add it to the pile, okay? Add it to the pile. The mounting evidence, at this point, undeniable, a mountain of it, right? It's not just one person's word. It's not just two people's words. It's not just one incident here or there. It's over and over and over and over and over again. Books have been written on this from Trump's foreign advisors, right? Not just one, several foreign advisors, right? And you have, again, anyone who interacts with this man who does not bend the knee is seen as an enemy and will be viciously attacked. That's it. But we have a show for you today. I just wanted to get that off my chest. Otherwise, it'd be going on. So I'm going to bring in my guests, and we're going to have a talk. And we're going to talk to third people who aren't convinced, right, who to vote for yet. And I wanted to have a discussion with them, or the people who are convinced and voting third party, right? And I wanted to talk about electoralism. And I wanted to kind of pick their brains on the thought process. It's not going to be a debate, I don't think, but We're gonna have him on. We're gonna have a talk, and it should be fun. Let's get this party started. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Boom, boom, boom. Hello, you're live. Oh no. Oh. There, I got my right screen on. Hey, can you hear me, sir?
Sorry, I am getting my headset connected. Give me 1 sec.
Well, no worries. You're a little early, right? It's oh well, you're not that early. It's 1 minute till. Hopefully the rest of the people show up. We were supposed to have quite a few guests today. About 4 of them. There's one here. Let's see if I can invite the others. How's everyone doing in my chat, by the way? How's everyone doing? Everyone having a good day? Wick, what's up, big dog? You know, living life, right? Do you know if she was hostile or got too close to the president from Niner Socks? I don't know. Trump campaign alleges that they have video showing and exonerating Trump in this. They haven't released it yet, and when they do, I might change my opinion. If she came in screeching and pushing them first, you know, fair enough. But if she was simply asking them not to do this here and then they shoved her aside, you know, that's a different thing. Hello, you're live.
Hello, hello.
Hey.
How's it going?
We can see you. We can hear you. So it's going good. How are you doing today, sir?
Not too bad. You know, my whole internet thing, but the guy's not coming till I'm in California, so the guy's not coming till like 4:35 now, so I'll be here. I don't have to leave for a while.
That's fine.
Hey, Dank. Guess what? You're a landscaper.
What's up?
What are you talking about?
You're filming in landscape. You're horizontal rather than vertical.
Okay.
I thought that was funny.
You know what? I'm glad that someone did. I'm glad that one of us found it amusing. Let me see if I can get the rest of you guys on. Talks amongst yourselves, right? Make some.
Yes, sir. Make friends.
Small talk, right? We're all friends here.
Do you like action figures? WWE? Yeah. My internet's not the best either. I hopefully don't cut out.
Is this going to be the through line between all of you who are voting third party or who aren't voting? Do you all just have sucky internet? Is that why? Maybe like, is there a correlation here, or is it like? Does one cause the other? I'm curious. Like, and if so, which way does
already
this go?
Getting roasted.
Does it?
Already getting roasted.
Go on.
We
please.
try.
To be fair, am I cutting out? Like, can you hear my audio?
I can hear you fine. Unfortunately, Dank's really cutting out though.
Okay.
Oh no, Dank. Oh no, Dank Sinatra.
Dank is a robot.
Oh.
Dank has roboted officially. He's gotten rugged.
They got him, gang. The CIA. It's a big deep state, the big government.
Yep. Qatari government has seized him.
Oh no. I don't know where the others are. Oh, there's one.
You found another one? A new challenger emerges?
Slowly but surely
there
we
go.
Filing their way in, and we can have a talk, have a discussion, right?
It'd be nice.
Yes. Hi, Joe. What's up, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How's it going?
Hey.
Just wrestling with the day. Okay, it's been a bit of a struggle, but we're getting through it. Okay.
Understandable.
Oh, poor Sinatra. I think we lost him. I think he's gone. He's just frozen in a moment of mild joy, which I guess if there's a way to go, that's probably the way to go.
I've definitely seen worse stills, so
True.
it is what it is.
We should have one more on coming. I hope they are on their way.
Hopefully, yeah.
But in the meantime, how's my audience doing? Never vote to raise your taxes. Hello, ACAB Batausi. I'm not sure. Tube
ACAB
says
is
this
cringe,
is
by the
why
way.
I'm voting for Joe Exotic. Are you really? Interesting.
He was actually supposed to be on the Libertarian convention ballot, but he pulled out somewhere, I think back in like March. So yeah, you could write him in, but he's not actually running anywhere.
Hold on. Our friend Ryan, our fourth guest for today, needs help getting on. So again, we're going with a theme. Joe is the outlier here. Joe's internet seems to be working great. Joe has a solid connection, a good setup, but everyone else is having a struggle today. Hold on.
Hey man, I was here. I was on time. I was early actually, so I think that deserves a decent amount of credit.
Hold on.
I may or not be able to display a camera at some point, but yeah.
Okay, I know this is riveting content, everyone. I apologize. I apologize.
Wait, are we live?
Yeah, we are live, by the way. Everyone,
Oh boy.
we're here.
Oh,
I wanted to talk a little bit before you guys came on about the Arlington Cemetery stuff, and I didn't want to pollute our discussion with that, so I just went live a little early, and then we had to talk.
Okay. He's backstage now, so there's our lovely fifth. There we go.
Oh, beautiful, excellent. Okay, have we all? First of all, Ryan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Do we have a camera today or not?
I do. Just trying to get it to work.
Okay, take your time.
Make it work. Tim Gunn, make it work.
Yeah,
All right,
okay,
man, there
we
we
got
go.
it. I love the bookshelf
Look
in
at
the
that.
background.
As long as your
It gives you
internet
an
works.
erudite feel. Okay. And I think we're all here. I think we're all ready. So let's start this show, okay? So first of all, welcome everyone to yet another episode of Whick TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. On Tuesday, I did a solo show. I am a Democrat. I am voting Harris, barring a catastrophic event, right? And we heard my perspective. Yesterday, I had some conservatives on, and I debated them, and we heard their perspective. Today, I wanted to have people on who were either not voting at all or who were voting third party. And I wanted to have a discussion with them, not so much a debate. I mean, it might be, but we'll see where it goes. It's not the intention. And I wanted to kind of just talk about what your values are, why it is you are or are not voting, and why you are voting for third party if you are voting for third party, and which third party you're voting for exactly. And I think it's an interesting discussion, and I want to thank all of you for being here. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to give each of you, just tell people who you are, introduce yourself, tell people if you're either voting third party, or if you're undecided, or if you're just not voting at all, and then we'll get into it. Sounds good? Sound good. And we'll start with our friend Ryan here. Ryan, last in, but first up. Go ahead. What do you got?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a long-time Democratic voter, so and old enough to have done that many times. I was, basically very deep in kind of various social justice causes for most of my adult life. Went to law school, and for the first time ever, I think, was confronted with the principled case for conservatism, let's say. So you're not reading like what the crazy people online are saying or the caricature, but like, what does Justice Scalia think about originalism? And realize that while my causes are quite liberal, my temperament is quite conservative, which was an interesting change for me. And left law school an originalist. Was deeply concerned by Trump because of his shredding of constitutional norms, which I found to be alarming and troubling. And then very much hoped that Biden would kind of ride in and restore those norms. And kind of the opposite happened. What we've seen instead is that in my entire life, there's just been an endless expansion of executive power. So you have president after president who's just testing the guardrails more and more and more till we end up where we are here today. And I'm in a difficult situation this election because while I do like the judges on the Supreme Court that were the result of the Trump administration, I don't particularly trust him as a leader or want him to be president. I don't particularly support the agenda of the current Democratic Party, and I didn't like Harris as a candidate when she was running the first time, and I have not learned anything about her that makes me trust her more than I did then.
Okay.
So I'm kind of just politically homeless at this point.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to have you, and I'm excited to kind of get into it and pick your brains and things like that. But let's hear what the other people have to say, and then we'll just get into it. Dank Sinatra, are you with us today? What do you got for us? Tell people who you are and what your deal is.
All right, so first, to apologize if my internet
Your internet is not working.
My
So.
Wi-Fi is
Robot.
is bad.
This might not work out for you, buddy. I know you talked to me beforehand about it just might not work. I don't think it's working.
My camera's off. Is it messed up, Robot?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Better.
That's fine. Go ahead. Give us what you got. Let's try again.
Okay.
One more time.
So we'll go with that. If I start becoming a robot again, let me know, and I'll have to dip out. So I just recently started getting into politics a lot more. I've always kind of been interested in it, but never done like a lot of research about people or anything like that. Even recently, unfortunately, I've been having to study for like program I'm doing, so I haven't been able to catch up too much like the last with the DNC going on. But for me, I don't like to put myself into a particular party because I just kind of go with what policies that I think are good, whether it be on the Republican side, Democratic side. I would say my values probably do lean more conservatively. So that's why I don't feel like I'd be able to vote for Harris. Unless I start seeing more of her talking about more of like the policies that she would like to support. And if it comes out where it's more like moderate, then maybe I can get behind that. And why I can't vote for Trump is because I have conservative values before my conservative values are American values. And I don't feel like he represents American values with the whole January 6th, trying to overthrow the government, all that stuff. So regardless of even him leaning toward more of my political values, I can't support that.
Okay. Well, thank you. It isn't roboting, so we may just have to have you faceless, buddy. Thank you for being here. I'm eager to pick your brain and talk to you about it. Next up, someone who is no stranger to my show, or my Discord, actually. Joe Lewis, what you got? Tell people who you are and what your deal is.
Yeah, no, if you enjoy, I guess, my opinions, just want to pick my brain further, probably the easiest place to get in contact with me is Discord. I am it's in the sphere of what we're talking about. When I say that to say, just go to Wick's Discord and you can ask me questions. I'll gladly answer them. So if that's something that you feel the need to incite more information on, feel free to find me there. I do have a YouTube and a Twitch, but that's kind of, you see me when you see me. As far as the topic is concerned, for me, right, third party voting is an important form of protest and expression. That's kind of where I land on it and that's where I am when it comes to third party voting. However, there's just structural limitations because of the domination of the two-party system. With that being said, if the election were to be today, I would be voting for Jill Stein. I think the longer term goal of legitimizing the Green Party to try to use that as a vehicle to leverage more coalition building within actual left parties and left people, I think is better than just throwing energy and resources into Democrats continuously. With that being said, outside of electoralism, I think the most immediate thing that people can do if you are in a position like me, where you are basically not down with the two-party system, not for Democrats, not for Republicans. However, you want to see actual change and actual, whether it be left or progressive politics, you're going to have to, unfortunately, in the current state of affairs, basically stick to the grassroots level, grassroots organizing, um, grassroots movements. So what that looks like within your community is going to be contextually different. So for me, even with that being said, that would still lead for me to be a individual who would vote for Jill Stein if the election were to be today. She obviously has a lot of work to do in other areas, and that might be something we can get into at some point in the conversation. But to sort of put this on a pin, for me right now, the clear candidate is Jill Stein, and the clear goal is legitimizing third parties. I think the only way to do that is through the Green Party right now. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. Last but certainly not least, Quinn, go ahead.
Oh,
Hi.
all right. So I am going to reveal that I am, of course, as people have seen before, a melanated American, but I also, for the sake of my Wi-Fi and whatnot, because I'm in a kind of weird place, I'm going to largely be off camera, like Dank. I'll just try to make this succinct with no, shade to my fellow panelists. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. I think it helps. I think for me, this is just a matter of trying to be as principled as possible and engage in actual civics. I've talked about this election as the vibe election. I actually am not the only one to be saying that. I've been seeing other people saying that more and more on Twitter. I won't take all the credit, but I think I deserve some of it. I think there's this very clear sense that, especially with the main two candidates, the main two-party candidates, and even to some extent, not some extent, a decent extent, the now semi dropped out RFK, they're just offering like feelings and loose sort of wishes and hopes, but now no clear like policy or platform. And even when they offer policies, it's very mutable and fluid and just kind of squishy and whatever. A known liar and a person, actually two known liars, technically three even known liars, but in particular like a known like criminal liar and a known like criminal prosecutor liar, and then a vaccine skeptic conspiracy theorist. All that to say, I'm voting for Chase Stein. Chase Stein. I vote for Chase Oliver. I vote for Chase Oliver. I have no shade
Like
actually on Jill
Stein
Stein.
and Chase just merged.
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly. I mean, yeah. But actually, no, I had no shade on Jill Stein. I gave her like somewhat favorable marks in my article on this. Oh yeah. So by the way, Edo Quinn, that's my my handle, EDOKWIN. You can find me on primarily Substack and Twitter, and I write the Edo Quinn editorial there. My most recent piece is on this vibe election, and I gave Jill somewhat favorable marks as someone who actually does have a policy platform that seems to be based off of principles rather than vibes. I don't agree with all of it, which is why I'm not voting for her, but I like Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate. For the first time in a long time, the Libertarian candidate for president is not cringe. He's a normal person, and he has like based liberty philosophy driving his policy. I'm looking forward to getting into it. Anybody who wants to vote however they want, I don't vote same people, it's fine. But I would encourage people who do have like deeper understanding of politics and election and are serious adults to vote and comment about the election like serious adults. Stop pretending that these people are superheroes or are going to save you, because that's what a lot of people tend to do, especially with the big two, and it's not real. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
okay. Well, lots of different directions we could go, lots of different places we could start, but I wanted to start a little bit with the people who are either undecided or just not voting at all this election, right? So Sinatra and Ryan. So you both mentioned that or at least Sinatra, you mentioned that you're waiting to hear something from Kamala that would help you to vote for her, so that you could understand what her policy positions. So this is a question to you specifically, but I also curious what Ryan thinks. What policy position or prescription could Kamala come out with that would make you be like, oh, okay, I am no longer not voting. I'm no longer on the fence. This policy is enough. It's solid. It's something I want. I'm going to vote for her. Is there anything?
I don't know if there's any like one thing. Uh, it's just like, if I remember correctly, she was more like progressive when she was running in like 2020. And and as far as like what I've even just heard so far with like the price setting for like groceries, um, I mean, I don't own a house, but it'd be cool to get 25K for being a first time buyer. But I don't know like, where the money comes is.
Damn.
Oh, no. You're
Yeah, win for
roboting
losing.
again, buddy. I don't know if this is going to work out.
Um,
Yeah, I'm sorry, dude.
I just stepped back and
I'm sorry, dude.
I
can't.
Save him. Save him from himself.
I can't hear you, buddy. But so we're gonna have to let you go. I'm
You're
sorry.
fine.
Oh,
I'm sorry. We lost one, gang. Oh no.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was
Okay.
curious where he was going with that, actually.
Me too.
Oh, well.
Ryan, go ahead. What are your thoughts? What could Kamala say or do or come out, or Trump for that matter? Right?
Yeah, I think my problems with her are like I think multi-layered, and it would be tough for her to solve them. I don't think it's undoable. I also, to be totally honest with you, don't think that I don't think that people who are thinking about the election the way I'm thinking about the election are such a big constituency that she should be targeting me. So I'm not sure. I can respect the game even if it's not working for me. So the first thing is, I need to have a better sense of who she is. And where I thought that the previous guest was going is that if you look at her record over time, she's an operator. That's how she looks to me. She changes her positions based on what wins her an election, which is fine. Like, you want to be where the voters are on some level, but I need to know what she actually thinks and believes, and get a read on her as a person. I was looking forward to the interview that's going to come out tonight. I haven't seen it yet. I would much prefer something long form where it's unedited and you actually get a sense of what she thinks. Because I think that's the big thing is I just don't know. Normally, you have a candidate and they make campaign promises, and you're playing a game of trying to figure out what are they going to keep and what are they going to break. And for me, I'm like, I have no idea really what she thinks. And then with specific policies, it would be nice to get into the weeds on them. Like I thought the best thing she said so far was that we need to increase the housing supply. That's 100% correct. There's nothing about the economics on that that's wrong. But how do you do it? I mean, most of the barriers to building housing are not federal. That's local, that's zoning. So what's the plan there? That's a complicated topic. I'd love to hear more about that.
So are you voting, or just to be clear, are you voting third party, or are you planning to vote third party at all?
I'm probably not. I'm debating whether I'm just going to sit this one out or just vote down ticket.
Okay.
Like for me, ultimately, if I had to like put a pin on why I want to be on this show, and some of the other guests made comments that I thought were important in this area. I've spent my life with a series of elections, and each one has been more negative than the one that came before it. And we're getting to the point where most elections are about
negative. Do you mean
to
like
vote
attacks
against.
about things like that? Negative
yeah.
campaign ads, stuff like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Because you have two choices, and it's harder to be appealing to everyone than it is to be better than the other guy. So the campaigns have correctly figured out that if you just attack the other person, you can win. And so we end up running people who have negative approval ratings on both sides, and that's the easiest way to get a win. But I would like to vote for somebody, not against somebody.
Okay, I want to open and broaden this discussion up.
I might just say, firstly, Ryan, I like a lot of what you said. You're deist something or other on Twitter, right? That's your handle.
Yeah.
I saw you. Cool. Please
Since
vote.
you mentioned it,
I
at Ryan C. Mullally, Mullally. I'm not really on social, but I am on Twitter. So follow me there. I say some interesting things occasionally. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. Please do vote. Even if you don't like, even if you like leave president blank. This is the thing I encourage people to do. I think voting is based. I think maximal enfranchisement is something that's really important. And more as I've gotten older, it's become really important to me that I encourage people to actually vote and that I vote myself. Even if I don't vote for president, because there's so many things on any person's ballot that are going to be relevant to their lives, more relevant to their lives than who's in some mansion in Washington, D.C. So, like your local representatives, your sheriffs, your judges, your mayors, your governors, as well as initiatives. There's a big initiative going on in Florida. There's an initiative in Georgia. That's where I'm at. There's initiatives in California pretty much every 2 years. So, yeah,
So just Quinn,
just
real
putting that out
quick,
there.
just to ask you,
Yeah, yeah,
Quinn, if I may, you
please.
mentioned that and I don't disagree with this, that down ballot voting is important and local elections will
Mhm,
affect your life more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But is
mhm.
your argument that the federal election for president won't affect someone's life?
I would say I take the kind of the Bill Burr stance, and Emily, this is a bit of a bit comedic, but it's this notion of who is in the White House is not the most important thing to any person's life, realistically. For most people, I won't say any person. For most people, yes, obviously it matters. This is a person who is going to direct the executive branch. This is another thing. There's one of the reasons I like Chase is that he talks about these things in very like grown-up terms. Not to just like circle back to my guy, but I just want to put that out there. It's like he says, for example, I'm not going to quote unquote do X. I'm going to encourage the legislature to do Y. I'm going to encourage the judiciary to do Z because he would be in charge of the executive branch. There are limits to the powers of the president, even in our modern day where the president and the executive is pretty, I would say, overly expansive. No, I mean, it doesn't actually have as much import to people's lives as like who their governor is, who their senators are, who their congresspeople are. It doesn't, in my opinion.
What are the
Just,
rest of y'all's
just if I
thoughts
could
on this?
jump in on one thing he said. I do agree that if you vote down ballot and you leave the top blank, I think that sends a stronger signal to the pollsters when they're looking at the data afterwards that there is an interested segment of the population that is voting but isn't voting for these two people. In the similar to how a third candidate voting for a third party candidate would read to a pollster, whereas if you just don't vote, you kind of get written off as a non-voting segment of the population, which is kind of a different category to be in.
Do you echo, Joe, do you echo, I guess, this thought that the presidential pick just isn't important? It doesn't really matter as much. All these things. Is this something you share with our guests here?
I think it's going to be a contextual example for a lot of people and kind of a test to see if they're really paying attention. I live in New Jersey. It doesn't matter who I vote for. I'm not the state that's going to determine the election. um,
Is that too?
but
Yes.
if you're in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania to a semi lesser extent, Nevada, Wisconsin, Ohio, Florida, that's just like a small list of the ones that kind of come off my head off the rip. Those are going to be very important elections for those individuals. So their ability to exercise their freedom electorally might be a little bit more constrained. That's why I think it's important to have a much more robust politic that's might include electoralism, might not. But if you are going to not participate in electoralism, I think you have to damn sure be doing other things politically, where you don't just want to get activated every 2 to 4 years for the ballot. So, yeah, like you're going to see in a lot of cases much more significant change in the immediate and at least in a decade to decade from the state and local levels. But that's not to say that the federal level when it comes to voting, whether it be Congress members or the president, isn't completely insignificant, but you just kind of have to weigh it towards everything else.
So, you said something interesting there, and I'm very curious. Would your stance change on who you voted for if, for president, to be clear, if you lived in, say, Pennsylvania or one of the swing states you mentioned, Georgia or
No,
what have you? So
Absolutely not.
even if you did live in a state where your federal vote for president had an oversized impact, you would still say, no, I'm not voting for either of these candidates. Why? I guess just to ask
Gaza.
directly. Gaza?
Gaza.
Gaza.
Gaza and
Okay.
families. Like if we're gonna look from just the American about it, I don't think Donald Trump nor Kamala Harris are going to be actually substantive towards helping families. I think Kamala is
What
very.
does that mean? Just I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Oh yeah,
when you say helping
yeah, no,
families, what do you mean?
absolutely. People are poor, and families are struggling in ways that, if you are a Democrat shill, are not clearly seeing. A very simple example of this is that the black wealth under Joe Biden has gone up. That's a good thing. That's something that the Biden administration will happily herald as an accomplishment of their administration. But that does not ignore that wealth increase is deadened by the persistent racial wealth gap, which is anywhere from 27 to 30% difference from black households to white households. And that's been consistent for decades now.
So
Furthermore,
did that
if we
gap
want
get,
to,
just real quick, did that gap get
yeah,
bigger under Biden? Is that your complaint?
the gap is
Oh, he said
continually
it got less.
increased. It's continually increased, so any type of increase in black wealth is hampered by that. Additionally, that wealth has been hampered by inflation, which we know that because of the impacts of inflation, that's going to affect those who don't have. The don't haves more than the haves, and that's been predominantly in black communities. So when you have an administration that's heralding like, oh, we're doing these things for black families, but then you still have Kamala Harris, who at least acknowledges that the racial wealth gap exists. But now it's her turn to say, hey, what am I going to do about it? And she hasn't brought anything of substance. Donald Trump doesn't care. He's apathetic in a way towards black people that's really pervasive. So you don't really have to like guess what he's going to do about that. But the concern that I have when it comes to, I'm speaking specifically about black families in this context, at least to answer your question, there isn't really a substance that Kamala Harris has presented in a way that I would change my stance in not voting for
Is
her.
there
Donald Trump is a non-issue. He's a non-starter for
Sure.
me.
Is there something that Kamala, with regards to leaving Gaza aside, let's put Gaza, that's a
Sure.
whole can of worms, right? But when it comes
Yeah.
to the racial wealth gap that is very important to you and the black families, which are very important to you, what policy or position or positions could Kamala come out with that might sway you over to that? Might be like, okay, this actually is something substantive.
$25 minimum wage, a homes guarantee, a long-term health care guarantee for those who don't have the ability to have access to things like nursing homes, as an example. She could come out for the public financing of elections, especially considering how she basically cooed her way into the position.
Big
Yeah.
Well, we could fight about that later. Well, me and Joe actually probably
Yeah,
agree
yeah,
on
yeah.
this, actually, but
Yeah.
we can.
And
Oh yeah, I forgot.
like,
You're a Biden simp. Go on.
and like, and again, like these are things that exist in the Stein campaign, and she's able to clearly articulate those things. And if she like, and again, like Jill Stein and the Green Party produce a legitimate threat for Democrats, because they want to pose themselves to being the party of the left, the party of progressives, and you have a candidate with clear progressive aims and progressive goals, and also recognizing that even though not every single person is going to be down within our party, we're more than happy to coalition build with people and make concessions as long as it's within the coalition of the broader left. And she's able to clearly articulate what that means, and that's a significant threat, because Democrats, time and time again, especially now more than ever, only have identity. They only have the fact that Kamala Harris is going to be the first X, Y, and Z. And that's not enough for a lot of people politically
Oh yeah.
to
Okay.
actually pay attention to these things. Like, I don't care how hopeful it's going to be. I care about what you're going to bring to the table.
Right. Actual policy.
Yeah. And this
Go
is a
ahead, go
great
ahead.
example of the trap of the two-party dominated system, right? Because,
Mhm.
Joe and I just from your listen, I've only met you today, but just listen to your remarks. I would say that we're both high information voters. Like we're reading a lot, we're thinking a lot about what we're going to do. If you enacted that laundry list of policies for the Harris campaign, you might get Joe's vote. You're going to lose mine, right? So in a two-party system, it's a better strategy. She is better off being vague, being vibe focused, and not being Trump, and then attacking him, because that appeals broadly, and you're not going to lose people who have strong opinions on what policy should be. So what's the upside for her in the current system for going hard after Joe's vote or going hard after my vote, knowing that if she gets one, she loses the other? I don't hate the fact that she understands the state of play. It just doesn't work for me.
But given that
Yeah,
that is just real quick, and then I'll let you go, Quinn. I promise. But given that that you recognize that that is a state of play, right? Does it not make more sense? And I'm just being devil's advocate here, right? Even if you don't find one of the candidates perfect, there should be one of the other, either Trump or Harris, that is closer to your goals. Is there not?
I think the problem with that reasoning is I made some version of that pitch to myself in each election where I voted against somebody over the past 20 years, right? And in each election, it got more negative, less issue based, more vibe based. The situation has gotten worse, and it's gotten worse not because the data is better. The politicians have a better understanding of how people vote and why, and they're not doing this by accident. It's not like Harris isn't putting out policy positions because she's stupid and doesn't have them. She knows it's better not to have policy positions. It's a tactic, and it's working, and I can respect that on a strategic level, but I don't know what the solution is other than to stop buying into it. Like if every 4 years you just say, well, I'm going to do this even though I don't think it's a good idea, then why would it ever change?
I hear you. I
There
agree.
is a clear benefit to the Kamala Harris campaign. I want to not. I'll give that white woman a few flowers in the context of the Oh, sorry, or black Indian, whatever she decides it is on a Tuesday. What's it, Thursday? Maybe she'll decide to be a black woman today.
Okay, Donnie, what are we doing here? She's actually both. Biracial is a thing, but go ahead, make your point.
Well, I mean, we can talk about that part, that critique that Trump just tried to do, but since he only listens to black people through proximity, he doesn't know like the content of the argument. Like, I'd love to talk about that because I love dragging that white
Content
lady.
of the argument is cringe. I'm aware the content is cringe, but go ahead.
You probably know the content. With that being said, there is something to say about Kamala Harris's lack of accountability and her fecklessness and her inability to stand on something. Because her inability to stand on something, her inability to advocate policy, her inability to actually speak her mind on policy allows for Tim Walz to exist. Because he's going to do that for her. So Kamala Harris is not stupid. Like, she knows subtly she doesn't stand on anything. So it's her duty and job to bring forth a lot of people who can stand on things in her defense. So that could lead to political people who are able to make the progressive fight, make the moderate fight for her. So we might get some like inklings of policy by virtue of her nebulousness, because again, she's going to need people who can speak upon those things. Like, you're not going to, like, the same thing that happened to Joe Biden. You're not going to talk to Joe Biden about the state of the pandemic and what we're doing moving forward. You're going to talk to Anthony Fauci. You're not going to talk to Joe Biden directly about where the economy is going to go with jobs and growth. You're going to punt that to Janet Yellen. So it's like there's the ability to have things that trickle forth because of her nebulousness, because of her vagueness, because the only thing that she brings is hope. But then the question is, for those groups of people who believe that to be the case and want to make that case for Kamala Harris, then she ought to especially establish what her cabinet is, because then that's where her actual politics are going to be.
She actually made a statement on that today. But before we get into that, because I want to address that with all of you, I wanted to hear what Quinn has to say, because we've been stepping over Quinn a little bit. Go ahead, Quinn.
Yeah. Appreciate that. And I'll just restate, like, just to be clear, I'm not saying that the president or the presidential election doesn't matter. I want to just be clear on that because I think that may have been gotten lost in the sauce a little bit. My argument is that it is potentially not the most important thing on the ballot, and more broadly, maximal enfranchisement is based. People should vote even if they leave top of ticket blank. Okay, that aside, I'm just gonna say it like respectfully to you, Joe. I'm gonna try and do the thing that I didn't do with somebody behind the scenes after a panel last week. I'm going to try not to assume anything or do any bad faith. But I don't think there is a good faith argument for doing the like what is Kamala nonsense. She's a biracial American woman. She is black. She is Indian. And she has always been black and Indian. And anybody who kind of even like gestures at, in my opinion, the whole like, what is she? Or, she turned black or all this kind of FBA freak in the sheet stuff. It's cringe. So I would encourage people not to go there. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but just saying. More broadly, in terms of the, vibes-based approach, I would say I'm somewhat sympathetic with what Ryan would say, that it works and that it is proving to be effective. She used vibes politics. It was super effective. But I also think that there is an argument for positive campaigning and for like offering affirmative positions. So like actually having a position, we talked about this the last time I was on the panel, like earlier, like last week, whatever. Having actual position on guns that was clear and didn't come out like within the middle of the convention after she had already been campaigning for weeks and should have had some clearer statements on that, probably going back to when she was a vice president, not running for president. Having clear policies, even on quote unquote non-issues that are cringe, like reparations, having clear opinions on and maybe clearer sort of stances and defensible things to say about the border, about the economy, things that aren't price controls, or price controls and basically agreeing with Trump on not taxing tips are two of like her staple economic offers that she's got on the table right now. Like she should be offering a lot more, and we should be demanding, just as American people, as the American voting public, as third parties, undecided, as whatever, demanding more of all these people than vibes. And that is again why I'm supporting Chase, because again, he's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. These are politicians. These are political operators. But where I disagree with him, I disagree with him on some things, the same way I disagree with any politician on some things. I can understand the theory behind why. I can't understand the theory behind why Kamala Harris could have an opinion that's sort of right of center on, let's say, Israel. And I don't think it's necessarily right, quote unquote, on Israel, but let's just say, like, for the sake of argument, imagine it was right of center on Israel. And a position that some people would say is like more based because she's acknowledging that Israel is a state, it should exist as a right to defend itself, blah, 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 but also wanting to find a peace and armistice and end to the conflict, which is good. But conversely, she would have a position that is, again, kind of oddly left of center on other foreign policy issues, or just, again, like nebulous and undetermined. Like, have a unified theory and go with that. The reason why I've said positive things, I don't like her, and I don't like her platform, about Jill Stein, is that there is a unified theory to her platform and to the Green Party. Have a theory of politics. We're adults. This is civics. This is philosophy. Have a unified theory and then go from there. And then we can argue about whether or not your theory is correct, your positions are correct, and go from there. And I get that again, is maybe boring and high info and it's not going to work with people, but I think that's the better way to do politics. So.
It's the world I wish I lived in, man. That's like my West Wing dream, right? That's how I wish the world was. When I reflect on the Biden presidency, the overwhelming conclusion I reach is that he was elected by a coalition of people who had nothing in common other than not liking Trump. And if you look at some of the struggles that presidency had, it was about the fact that his base doesn't actually want the same things. He actually had very different views on a lot of stuff. So when you start like talking about like student debt relief, for example, there's a lot of people who really want that to happen. There were a lot of people, myself included, who were like, that's flagrantly illegal. There's no chance that's going to pass the Supreme Court. The president shouldn't promise to do something he can't do. And, it shatters when you have a policy position, because the unifying factor was vibes. It was not Trump. Not a cohesive vision about what democratic politics should be, which I don't, I mean, it gives you a big tent, but it gives you kind of a fragile base.
So I'll say this. Look, I've criticized Kamala for being too vague, much too vague for my liking. I agree. But let's not pretend that we don't basically know what she's going to do, right? It's going to be a continuation of the Biden policies, whether we like it or not, right? It's going to largely be just the basic Democratic platform. She has come out with specifics. She's talked about building more homes. Ryan mentioned that earlier. You mentioned her stances on price gouging and other things, and she's done an interview that I'm curious to see today, which we'll probably have more. But she also mentioned something, because speaking of cabinets, Joe mentioned cabinets and the administration. He alluded to that earlier. One of the statements that she's made recently, I think it was either today or yesterday, on cabinet positions, is that she has made it clear that she wants to appoint a Republican to her cabinet if she wins. That in her administration there will at least be one, right? Maybe it's a DEI hire, I don't know, right? But at least one Republican.
Affirmative action.
Is that something that impacts you at all or tells you anything? So for me,
I'm just
right?
gonna go first.
Well, okay. For me,
go ahead.
I think that makes me more supportive of Harris. One of my big things, and I understand that it's not super policy based, but I think it matters, is not treating the other side as an enemy, not treating people who disagree with me as enemies to be destroyed. I want to bring them in. I want to let them have a seat at the table. And yes, I think reasonable Republicans should have a seat at the table. So that kind of statement and pledge, assuming she's serious about it and assuming she's not going to break that promise, actually speaks to me. Is that a super specific policy position? Not really, but I do think it sends a signal that I think is important to how an executive governs and whether they're going to shut out the other side completely or if they're going to try to work with them. And I do think that. So that's my opinion as someone who is voting Harris. For those of you who aren't, I'm curious what your read on this, what your thoughts on this. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, okay. So I will say, I agree with the sentiment that you offered, Whick. I also often have said, like, I had an awakening over the last, I'd call it 10 years. Broadly speaking, more like 8, but let's say 10 years, where I realized that Republicans are people. Republicans are people too. And it was the sort of soup that I was swimming in where sort of left of center people broadly considered Republicans to be like less human or less good by virtue of who they voted for is cringe. Joe Biden did not save us from Mitt Romney reinstituting slavery, all this kind of nonsense. So I want to say I would agree with your sentiment, but on the flip side, it's like, it really doesn't matter. Both sort of big tents, if we're going to be honest, have kind of brought in reasonable, quote unquote, or sympathetic voices on either side. I mean, I talked about choose your own adventure republicanism, and the Trump campaign, the Trump sort of the MAGA group are patting themselves on the back over the RFK endorsement and Elon Musk and all this other nonsense. Like, we're the unity party. No, you're fucking not. You're just a bunch of cringe assholes who want to vote for the same guy. You even if you don't all believe the same things, it's not a unity party until and unless you actually make meaningful concessions in terms of both your policy and your rhetoric to people who aren't already aligned to Donald Trump. Conversely, on the Democratic side, okay, you could find like more sort of bad faith, I'll say, as one example, and more sort of good faith on another example. You could find a Lincoln Party grifter, or you could find like a Joe Walsh or, a dispatch never Trump or whatever, and bring them in as a token Republican. Like they brought in, that one, blonde Republican chick on the West Wing. And it would just be tokenism. It really would just be tokenism. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not impressed. I'm not convinced. What would be a real unity party that'd be really based?
I disagree with that. By the way, I think it does matter, but go ahead.
Okay. I'll finish up, but like, sure. A real unity party that would be really based would be, hey, let's agree on bipartisan things like, the debt is too high and we need to fix that. And if you want to get Republicans and Democrats in on that, if you want to get Republicans and Democrat economists in on that, if you want to get Republicans and Democrats to work at various things like DOD and ED and as economic advisors, that'd be great. If you had like guaranteed at least two Republicans as one guy from Cato, one guy from AEI, and maybe even one guy from Reason to be in the economic advisor seat, that would be more impressive to me than just a random Republican who works in a random department. He could work in fucking, like the interior for all we know. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's me being cynical, I guess.
No, that's sure.
Did she say what position she was thinking of filling that way?
Not that I'm aware
No.
of. No. She was not
Did not.
specific.
I don't how do I be calculating what I'm trying to say here so it's clear? I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger did it, Charlie Crist did it, Bill Haslam did it, John Kasich did it. Nobody cared. Like nobody cares about a politician appointing somebody from another party, for God's sakes. Like Schwarzenegger appointed, what's a lady's name, Susan Kennedy, to be his chief of staff. For John Kasich, it was Greg Moody for the Department of Transportation. It's not uncommon for Democrats or Republicans to reach across the aisle for the sake of bipartisanship, but yeah, they have to. It's part of their governance. They like Democrats exist to appease Republicans when necessary. There's nothing that's going to say when the line's in the sand with something. It's usually the line in the sand with Republicans. We talked about this when Josiah was here, and a lot of times, more often than not, you're going to see Democrats having to go further to Republicans than Republicans moving at all. And by virtue of that, that just means that the country is going to slowly tilt more and more right wing. And not to mention, like, I'm in a state that just expanded the Eyes in the Sky program in the very police department that was abolished. So on one hand, you have Democrats who are shaking each other's hands and high-fiving for the abolishment of a police department in Camden County, and for the reestablishment of that, and making that the quintessential identification of how you should do police abolishment. But then at the same time, you want to have a $1 billion expansion of the surveillance state of that very area. So it's like, I don't know what I do with that, because it's like, I didn't know that putting cameras everywhere in an area is progressive, but fuck me, right? Like there's no, like, they have to work together in these situations. So even in the face of police abolishment, what's that?
I gotta disagree with you, Matt. Like I think there's, if you can reach across the aisle and you can get a segment of the population, and you're talking 66, 70% of people agree on something, like you're actually hitting a true bipartisan effort. And for the record, I do not know this is it. Like this is a gesture. I would need to actually see her talk about. I need to evaluate it on my own with my own two eyes, not secondhand. I need to actually see her talk about it, because it could be an empty promise. But that is the kind of thing that does matter, because we don't have to exist in a world where politics have been this nasty. We really don't have to be this bad. I get that they're nasty, but they don't have to be this nasty. And I think that there is a certain level of respect that you need to have with the fact that, like, she gets too into the weeds on details of, I would say, a very specific progressive issue that you raised, for example. Like, what does that do for her nationally, right? Like that's death. It only costs her voters. For every one she gets, she loses 10. So, I think this kind of gesture could matter. I don't know that it does, but it could. Hopefully she does something where she can talk about it and we can get a sense of it in a less tightly scripted, tightly edited format. Ideally,
I want to give the mic to Joe to let him push back a little.
Yeah, I didn't mean to like cut you off mid cook there, Ryan. My thing is just that I don't care about what political party you are on. I don't care about what your political ideology is per se. It's about the substance of the situation at hand. And that's the part that I'm most critical on. Where if you are looking to, I'll use the Camden example because that was in my previous statement. If you're going to talk about the improvement of police and you want to herald this as abolishment and you want to herald this as like the golden standard to what we ought to do with police, don't expand the police state. Like you're not going, the only people you're going to do for that is appease the right. And now granted, if that was the whole thing all along, then cool, you can articulate that in your argumentation, you can articulate that into the why you're doing this. But if you're trying to say that, hey, we are doing this thing because it is a net good towards the goal of what we're doing, then you can say that and articulate that. That's where I'm at on this. It's like the substance of the thing, as opposed to the ideology or the political leaning itself. There's plenty of people within the Democrat Party, for example, who, for what it's worth, wouldn't be Democrats if there was a system with a robust third party. Like, we can, like, do we really want to believe that Ilhan Omar is a Democrat anymore? Are we still going to keep playing that game? Like, are we going to really, like, you really want me to sit here and look at, what's that woman's name? Marjorie Taylor Greene, and think that there was an alternative legitimate party that you would ought to go to that instead? Like, we know these people are ideologically misaligned with the very party that they're in. And then, like, what Democrats do, because they're the only party that actually gives a fuck, they'll gladly find a way to get your ass out over a fire alarm, though, even though it's really about Israel, but we'll paint it like the fire alarm and you're doing these things that are against decorum. But we know what it's about. Where it's
Hold
like, if
on,
you really
are
want to
you
see,
defending his Jamal Bowman's pulling of the fire alarm?
I support his stance on Israel more than what he does by accident or what have you. Like, I care more about those
Okay.
positions. Like, because then politically, right, you can't, as a Democrat, you can't be critical of Israel. It cooks you. It's a literal political suicide. And you have two options. You can do the AOC route where you just kind of shut the fuck up and you realize, like, oh, I can be the next Nancy Pelosi, so let me just keep my mouth shut for about 10 to 15 years. Or you can be the Ilhan Omar and go, hey, I'm going to run. I'm never going to have a voice. No one's going to really know what I sound like. Or in Jamal Bowman's case, I'm going to be publicly critical, and then they're going to fucking oust me out immediately. And that's kind of the name of the game. Where at least Democrats have the spine to subvert those who are against what they stand for and either just vote them out or find a way to get them out or find somebody with like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I have a question on your.
yeah, I was just riffing at that point.
Yeah, sure. I have a question on what you said about AOC, right? So a lot of the left recently has been very critical of AOC because she has been playing the game, so to speak, if I can use that language. She has been
Aced.
basically saying, okay, I will get what I can, what is possible, and those stuff that I want that is just not possible now, I'm just going to leave that alone until perhaps in the future it is. Do you not think, and I guess this goes to my argument in all this, because I do think that there is a clear choice in November here, and I think Harris is absolutely it. I make no apologies or secret of my bias here, right? Keep that in mind. But I don't think she's perfect at all. In fact, there's a lot I don't like about Harris, to be clear, right? I don't like how she came to power in this. I don't like how they pushed Biden out. I don't like the vagueness of her policies in a lot of ways. I don't like some of the positions that she's stated. I don't like the price gouging thing. I don't. However, when I look at things and I weigh things in what is possible right now, today, in this election, what action is going to get me closer to what I want, not just on one issue or two issue, but overall. I think that's clearly Harris, and I think Trump doesn't just not get me closer, but takes me back on almost every position. So if you do care about things like Israel and Gaza, and you do care about these things, you recognize that, come on, it ain't going to be perfect on it, but surely it's better than Trump, is it not? And AOC is doing that. She's making that calculation, and she's basically making the calculation I am, and saying, okay, these people are better on the things that I care about. These people are worse. So while they're not perfect, I'm getting behind them. Why is that wrong? Please.
It's not wrong. I would just say it's a little misinformed. At this stage of the game, I don't think you can clearly make an argument for Kamala of substance. You can vaguely allude to the idea of Donald Trump being worse, but when it comes to, okay, well, what's Kamala going to do differently? I don't see, because again, the evidence isn't there yet to suggest that she would be substantively different. Now, granted, that's
fair.
going to be the job of the people that she appoints, because I know she's never going to articulate that. I just know that she's not. And then the moments where she gets pressured, then it's going to go to the people behind her who are able to talk about those things for her. Now,
That's
the
fair.
thing that I appreciate about Jill Stein is that because she's playing a different game and there's a different calculus when you are a third party building, is that you can really go anywhere and wherever you want. And then you're more than happy to take the invitations where they fall, but it's the onus of those media corporations to take those invites, to send you those invitations. And she talks about this a lot, where it's like, even she can't even get an invite on Democracy Now!, but they're more than happy to call up Cornel West in his room with all his nice posters and talk about his bullshit. Then
That
for
is pretty
somebody who
cringe.
already is having legitimate challenges legislatively, meanwhile, you have an established person with an established party who's available in 75% of states, some of which are also battleground, but she's not significant enough. But you can invite Cornel West on
You know what
for
that
him
is, right?
to pontificate. What's that?
You know what that is, right? You kind of called it out, but the reason why they would invite him is kind of similar to the RFK thing on the Republican side, because he's a friendly who's not actually going to be a threat. They're not worried
Right.
about it. Whereas
Right.
they hate Jill Stein because they saw her as a spoiler that lost for Hillary.
Well,
So,
and that's not that they see her as a spoiler, because I think calling her a spoiler is a little bit like not really
they're saying what
clearly
they see. That's
Sure,
what they think.
sure.
That's what they think. Yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I understand. My whole thing with Jill Stein is that there is a legitimate chance of seeing a legitimate third party in our lifetime, and that only hurts Democrats long term. Republicans don't give a shit. They're like, listen, we already want more people. We already want more coalitions, and we have these existing within our base. We just
Is
know
that what
how
they
to kind
want?
of. What's that?
Is that what they want? I mean, maybe
Oh,
that's
for
maybe that's
sure.
the new sort of Trump thing that they wanted. But like before, Republicans wanted as little enfranchisement as possible. So that's got to be a change.
No,
Is
I'm
that fair?
saying that
Third
like
party's always
they're
tough. Like Ross Perot was rushing to the
they're
Republican
more than
Party
Ross
back
Perot
in the
got
day.
like 20% of the popular vote or
He
something,
was
some
he
crazy
he
like
could have
that.
he almost. I mean, a third party candidate. He was the one who almost pulled it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
The thing is, Republicans understand that, though, like, if there is going to be some type of build within the right, and even something as close to a legitimate third party, they know that they can just suck them up whenever they need to. I mean, they did it to fucking Vivek Ramaswamy. But again, he was running a different to be fair, because that might be a poor
Running the primaries,
characterization,
but yeah.
but because he also clearly articulated that he was a libertarian running on the Republican ticket because of the limitations that the LP faced, and that he felt that, you know, maybe they're ready for a brown person now, guys. Maybe we're nope. Fuck me. Okay, great.
You ever try to organize
Fucking Ann Coulter.
libertarians? That's
Yeah, like when he
Firstly,
Good
Vivek
God.
Ramaswamy
Yeah.
he just is whatever he needs to say he is, and that way he is similar to Kamala. He's whatever he needs to say he is to get people to like him. But also, like, did you remember that interview he did with Ann Coulter, where she literally said the thing? I can't vote for you because you're Indian, but we'll get to it later. Like, what
and
the
yeah,
fuck?
yeah.
These people are nuts.
But
But
in the
I will
face
say
of
the difference
yeah.
between the way Vivek handled that and the way that Harris is handling is that he's better in long form interviews. Like if you sit
Yes.
down and listen to him talk for an hour,
Handling what specifically? Just to be clear, what we're talking
Vivek,
about.
yeah, for context, Vivek was a debate lord before we saw him. He was already rhetorically, if I'm giving him, I can't believe I'm giving this man flowers, but he always was the rhetorically strongest person in the room. And he knew how to cultivate an audience. He knew how to obfuscate he knew how to obfuscate conversation. He was welcomed discourse and friction when he was running, which was something that none of the parties were doing at the time when it came to dissent. So he was the perfect catalyst to basically cause a little bit of ruckus. I mean,
Is that
he's
what you're referring to when you said that because what I'm specifically asking to Ryan specifically
yeah,
is you mentioned that the difference between how Vivek and Harris was handling it, and I just want clarification on what it is that they were handling.
Well, we've been talking a lot about the idea of kind of like coalition building, vibes-based elections, and then in the most recent exchange, kind of being everything to everyone, and the benefit of that politically. And Vivek, to his credit, is very good at speaking extemporaneously. So he'll get on a podcast, he'll have an hour conversation, and his ideas make more sense at the end of it than they did at the beginning. And I don't think that's, well, if that is a strength for Harris, she hides it well. And the way they're running the campaign makes me believe it's not, because they're trying to keep her out of those situations. And I think it's probably good strategy, but if she loses this election, it's probably going to be because Trump's doing the podcast circuit and she's being very tightly controlled.
You
in
hear
a
that,
media
Kamala? Come on Wick TV, okay? Come on
Hey.
Wick TV, and we'll get you out
Well,
there to the
it's
voters that matter. But anyway,
Like,
The problem.
there is no politician I disagree with. I'll say, I don't want to say just be too strong. I disagree with Bernie Sanders about more things than almost anyone I can think of.
Yep. I know what you're going to talk about. Go ahead.
But I watched him on Joe Rogan because it was a 3-hour conversation in which he got to articulate his vision, and I left that conversation going, I still don't agree with him on policy, but this seems like a really good guy who really believes what he says and is doing things for the right reasons. And it changed my perspective on him, even if it didn't change my perspective on his policy. And that's, I think, not some. I don't have that sense for Harris at this point.
Absolutely. May I just jump in on that? Like, I thought you were going to say this past weekend with Theo Vaughn, because he did that too. Literally, here's what happened.
Oh, good.
Here's what happened. This is a sort of a lower tier Joe Rogan, but it's a similar kind of idea. It's a podcaster, comedian. He has a bunch of like different people on, and Theo Vaughn.
imagine being called a lower tier Joe Rogan. Imagine that, gang. I just want you to.
Imagine being a lower tier Oprah. Like Joe Rogan is a huge deal, but
if you host the podcast, you're a lower tier Joe Rogan. Let's be honest.
Yeah, like that's not an insult at all. But anyway, and it's not a comment on anybody's personality or intelligence. But anyway, so he had literally Donald Trump. So like literally the man himself, the Republican nominee, and then because he couldn't get anyone else, he had Bernie Sanders as like the sort of what's that term? The equal time left of center analog. Yeah, exactly. And it was like, and Bernie Sanders is the thing. Bernie Sanders does the podcast circuit, and he's one of the only people who's run for the highest office and who currently is in office who will just comfortably do the podcast circuit and like Ryan said, lay out his worldview. And this is huge. I wish more Democrats would do this, right? It's not like the only one besides Bernie who has done it, and it was it was basically 4 years ago, was a younger Joe Biden doing stuff like the Breakfast Club and Charlemagne's interview show. Like, it is insane that Kamala doesn't do interviews. That this it's a big like news story that she's going to be doing a dual.
Is this fair to say though? Because again, she's not even been on the ballot really for a month. I mean,
we said this last week. I'm sorry. I'm not.
But is this fair
argument that it's too soon or it's unfair? I'm unmoved by. She was the presumptive nominee going into the convention, and she is the nominee now. I'm sorry. I think it is fair to criticize the fact that she will not do interviews when Trump has been doing interviews for like over 4 years within this current cycle, and just in general, we'll do interviews with a variety of sources. We'll do interviews with friendlies and non-friendlies. He went, to the black journalists, etc. Like, have an interview.
If she did more interviews, would you be more likely to vote for her?
That's what she said.
I will say, I am not inclined to vote for her now, and it would take a lot. And
so
just an interview
it
alone
wouldn't
would
matter either way. You wouldn't vote for her.
It would matter. I'm going to answer the
not.
question. Can I give context? I give context. Everybody filibusters when they give answers. Come on, give me a little filibuster. Okay, it would matter, but an interview alone is probably let's put it this way. I'd be more impressed with a podcast long form interview without Tim Walz by her side, because the only interview she's committed to doing so far is going to be with Tim Walz by her side for some reason. But a solo interview on a podcast, long form, would be more impressive to me than going on, with George Stephanopoulos for like 30 minutes or whatever. But yes, an interview, obviously, and more and more of them cumulatively would be a step in the right direction, and that would en- endear me to her in a way that, like,
Okay.
talking about sheets and McDonald's does
And-
not.
And to
So,
be clear,
yeah.
I agree with you on this. I do think that she should do more. Like I'm not going to join in the criticism that she's like a coward for not having the debate on Fox News. I don't think that's true. However, if I was her and my opponents asked me for more debates, I would just give it to them. And I think that just for the sake of the voters being able to have more exposure to both interacting on a stage together, I think more debates is probably good. So I don't disagree with you so much on the fact that her doing more interviews would be a better thing. I do, however, push back against the fact that this somehow disqualifies her or makes it less likely that she's going to do what it is that the policies that I want done, that it makes it less likely that she's going to get them done. I just don't think that's true.
I wouldn't say it's that it means that they won't do the policies. Sorry, Joe. I would say that what it means is we don't know what the policies are. And you say like I would agree with Joe on this. We don't know. You can guess, but we literally do not know. And to say that you know, it's kind of like it's an act of faith. You don't know that Kamala Harris's policies are real. It's imaginary. It's an act of faith. You don't know that God is real. It's imaginary. It's an act of faith. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, so here's like my thing. I'm trying to be reformed here. I'm trying to, do a little bit of spice, which is more of my actual opinions.
We got my audience asking you to call Kamala white adjacent.
I think I'm passing the class today. I think I'm very well behaved, but respectfully, why are we giving this? Why are we trying to act like we're going to give this woman cookies for something that she should be already be doing? Right? Like, one of the parts about democracy, what we believe democracy to be, is that these sorry, I can't say the N-word here. These motherfuckers are available.
Gamer words. So I like gamer words, but Whick does not. So please no gamer words.
Well, to be clear, Whick and I push back because I can't say the N-word, but I can say the R-word in his Discord. I think that is contradictory and ought to change. But I do understand why it's banned. Based on me navigating in that Discord, I understand why it's banned. However, anyway, jokes aside, I think that, I want to see Kamala Harris in more conversations with people and more discussions about what she feels and believes politically, what she feels and believes as a matter of what the country should do. But at the same time, that's just asking for the bare minimum. One of the things that makes Trump so dangerous is the fact that he was a celebrity before he was a politician. So he knows the way of the road to go on certain podcasts and be a little bit spicy for the crowd that's watching, but also stay restrained into what he's saying. I think he did that in Theo Von very well. He knows what to do in a hostile environment to get the clip, which is the only way people would give a shit about the Black Journalist Convention. The only reason why people give a shit is because they knew that, like, hey, you're like, I mean, I'd love to talk about that part because I think Donald Trump did great. I think he did exactly what he wanted to do. But it is a good clip to think, hey, in a conversation about a woman trying to dodge the allegation of a DEI hire, the very people who are trying to critique me about the DEI hire are 3 Black women on a panel. And I'm just gonna roll with that irony and act like nobody's seeing what I'm seeing. So I thought that was a net good for him, but he knows these things when he accepts them, which is why for me it's not surprising. However, the one thing that Democrats love to do, and I'm talking about like mainstream capital D Democrats, is when they make these appearances, they do it in such a way where it's not an overtly hostile environment. Joe Biden, when he went on the Breakfast Club in 2020, it was not a hostile environment. When Kamala Harris, she went on in 2019, it was not a hostile environment. The field of terrain was totally different. Now, Charlemagne's a piece of shit because Kamala Harris did go on his show and he was being a toxic piece of shit. But that's what I expect. I expect the hosts to go, "Hey, I'm gonna roll this the way it's gonna roll, and you're gonna answer my questions and have fun." And unfortunately, for I'm talking like mainstream capital D Democrats, they don't have the sort of media training and media tact to be able to sit with Joe Rogan for 3 hours or sit with the Breakfast Club for an hour. And
No. They have the media training not to do that.
I mean, look what happened. Look what
That
happened
is the
to
media training.
look
The,
what
the
happened to
thing,
fucking Eric Adams. He
yeah,
got he
no,
got dog walked by a very
yeah.
attractive black woman in Miami, and then like people were going, oh, we were like, wow, who is that? And I'm like, oh, they brought in the woman whose content was centered around dragging one man, and then you brought her on, and he didn't know that. Like, how
So
how naive can you be? Like,
Can I?
yo, like
Yeah.
this woman is critique you online, and you're not gonna watch any of her content, and then you're gonna act like you look good. That was so
Who was
bad.
he dragged by? I'm sorry, I don't remember. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah,
familiar with
me.
this lore.
So he went on the Breakfast Club in the peak of that whole all of his nonsense, and he goes on to
Uh-huh.
these things in the past before. But they also invited Oyemi on because they basically knew like
Ellie
Charmaine or
Emmy.
Oyemi. Yep.
Okay,
No,
let's look this person up. I
I'm not
guess.
sure of this event either. I didn't actually see it. But
Oh, it's funny.
I want
It's
to.
funny. Good content.
I hear you, Ryan. I'm going to give you the mic
yeah,
in a second, but I just have one question for Joe before we get into that, because you started off this whole thing about we should be giving cookies to Kamala for trying to do what she should already be doing anyway. I just disagree with that as well. I think that in order to incentivize people to do what we would like them to do, when they do it, even if we think they should be doing it anyway, they shouldn't. This is just part of their job. You reward that behavior. I'm a big believer in rewarding behavior that I feel is good and not when it's bad. So even if it's a little thing, right? Even if it's a little thing, I try to at least give some accolades to people when even people I disagree with, right? The people who I yell at and we go back and forth. I do give them some accolades for showing up to talk to me, right? I think it's important. If we're going to be critical of people for doing things that we don't like, then we should also praise them for when they do things that we think they should. But I'll let you respond to that. Then we're going to give the mic to Ryan. And thank you for the $2 Fates to say, were any of you Bernie or Busters? Were any of you Bernie or Busters?
I've never
I was
seen a
never a
black
Bernie
Bernie
bro.
or Buster in my life. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say the toxic thing out
uh,
loud. I've never
Yeah.
seen a black Bernie or Buster. I saw Brianna
I,
Jorglais as his press secretary, but I've never seen a black Bernie or Buster.
I think that black people like Bernie Sanders. I was not a Bernie
Well, I was saying
bro.
a Bernie or
I
Buster.
Sure. I know. Okay. Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, when black people go ride or die, they go ride or die for the D. They love the D. But I was not that. I liked Bernie in 2016. I think I ultimately either went Gary Johnson or I just didn't vote top of ticket. I think the problem with Bernie was, and a lot of people feel the same way. He capitulated to the DNC at a certain point, and it's pretty hard to be a Bernie or bust when he's capitulating to the same person or same group that you already wanted major concessions for, wanted to leave the plantation of. And I don't love
Hold on. Do you
that
think
term,
Bernie
leave the
has?
plantation, but
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry, Ryan. I'm going to interrupt you again. I want to give you the mic, but I got to push back on you, Quinn.
Go ahead.
This idea that he would. Well, no, I guess I'll do it this way. I'll ask you this: do you think that Bernie, in his run and his conforming with the DNC, do you think he's moved the DNC and the Democratic Party and platform left, or do you think he has had no change, or do you think he's pushed it right? Which do you think?
I want to answer this too.
Right, why not? We're probably gonna be in the same direction, more or less. Right wing Bernie Sanders, the biggest right wing. No, I think in general, it's been significantly less than anyone who would want to say that he's made a difference would want to say. Let's put it this way, right? Like, has he done anything? Sure. Would I say it's a difference of degree? Like, yeah, it's like you might say it's 5 degrees. I would say it's 1 degree. Joe might say it's 0 degrees. And I would probably say Joe is directly incorrect, but I'll let Joe answer.
Sure. Well, before Joe answers, just to respond. I think it's been significantly less. He made universal health care in that pretty much part of the Democratic Party platform in a way it just wasn't, even during Obama and the Affordable Care Act, right? Like his running has put on very progressive positions into the Democratic just lexicon and what we're talking about. And I think if he
There's
had,
AOC too, though.
yeah, if he had decided to rebel, right, and to not conform to the extent that he has, I think that any of that goodwill would be lost. I think that any incrementalism which he engaged in would be lost, and it might even actually end up hurting his cause. But
And the best and most nuanced and most realistic attempt to reform higher education in this country I've ever seen as a policy proposal was the result of the compromise between the Sanders campaign and the Clinton campaign in that convention. Like when those groups put their heads together, they actually came up with a policy that was going to be based around community colleges and creating competition where you'd have state schools and community schools that were essentially be free, which would then create price pressure on private schools and drop prices in kind of like an organic free market approach. It was a really good policy, and it would not have happened if there hadn't been kind of an eventual coalition between those camps. And of course, then it never happened because she lost. But
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a shame that none of that ever happened. But I get that
yeah,
you're saying
shame
the
it never
policy
happened.
platform,
That
the policy
pesky,
platform
pesky-
probably was okay.
go ahead,
Yeah.
Joe.
In terms of like, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, no. What were you gonna say, Quinn? To finish the thought?
Also, in terms of like the actual deliverables that we got under a mixed coalition government, because again, it's not just it's not just the guy who's in the White House. We did have Democrats in the legislature all throughout the Trump years. There were some Democratic wins throughout the Trump years and through the Biden years. In terms of what Bernie Sanders and AOC and the sort of like left of the sort of mainstream Dem wing of the Democratic Party has done, and to be fair, again, Bernie Sanders properly is an independent who caucuses with Democrats, but leave that aside. I just don't know that he's delivered as much as people would want to say he has delivered. Like in terms of a policy platform that a president ran on, okay, and then lost, but I'm not impressed. I'm sorry.
I mean, he lost. What could he deliver on? I think the question is, what kind of influence did he have on the political conversation? And I'm with Whick on this one. I don't think it's even close that he had a.
Okay, the conversation, sure. No, he influenced the conversation by his entire campaign. Yeah. By his entire campaign, absolutely. I'll definitely give you that. The conversation was changed for sure. And he continues to do it by going on podcasts. So shout out to him for that.
And
Okay.
look, and the reason people love him is is his policies. They're not my policies, but I get why people love them. But also, we talked about this, but like he projects genuineness. He really does believe what he said, and he doesn't need media training to go on a long podcast because he's just saying the things he believes. It's not hard to say the things you believe if you don't care how they pull. If you're just going to go out and say them, right? And look, I'm in law. I've spent a lot of time in hearing rooms and courtrooms and giving oral arguments, and I recognize what Harris is doing, which is that when you're going in and you need to represent a point of view and you need to be very careful about that point of view, and especially as a lawyer, it's not always your point of view, it's the point of view you've been hired to give, right? You need to make sure that everything you say and do advances that point of view. So it's very hard to be in a position where you're going to be speaking extemporaneously because you can't necessarily be trusted to give an extemporaneous answer. Like you said about media training, Joe, you would have to have prepped every possible question because the answers aren't necessarily yours. And is that her situation? That's what it looks like right now.
Yeah.
It looks like how we in the industry prep for a hearing with a judge, where we anticipate all the possible questions, we mood it, we get really in the weeds, we know we have an answer for everything prepped ahead of time, so that we can stay on message, which is really valuable if you're trying to stay on message. It's a lot less valuable if you're trying to project genuineness.
Something that rings to me a little bit in this conversation is what happened in Jersey for the Senate race. So during the Senate race, I'm gonna try to make this as short as I can. The former, I guess the incumbent in this case, Andy Kim, was running for election, and he had two opponents, Lawrence Ham and Patricia Campos Medina, and Andy Kim, in all of his niceties, thought it would be a good idea to have 3 combinations, one of which was informal. The second one was a semi-informal guided discussion, and the third was a debate. And I gotta tell you something, that man embarrassed himself. Andy Kim during that was a actual embarrassment for anybody who voted for him. But what that did, which I thought was really incredible to see, is that that legitimized Patricia Campos Medina and Larry Ham in that election, so much so that Andy Kim only won the primary by I think it was somewhere in like 70% of the vote, which when it comes to incumbents is crazy. Crazy. For context, Bonnie Watson Coleman has won my primary in my district in the high 80s to 90s. So it's like 89%. Any challenger, she dog walks. But what was unfortunate and what was fuel for the Campos Medina campaign and the Ham campaign was that they grilled Andy Kim. They grilled him on issues. And every time they had a direct question about him in terms of policy, he could not answer. And that's one of the things that I think was really enlightening for a lot of people that I spoke to when it comes to the idea of having internal discourse and debate, which is why I think Kamala Harris needs to have as many conversations with her political opponents as possible. In this case, having debates with Donald Trump. Because
You
if
just
you're
gave the
looking to
reasons why she won't.
I understand. I know why she won't. I know
Yeah.
exactly why she won't. But I'm
He'll
thinking like
debate. He'll
it's
debate.
like internal discourse and debate should be standard. Like even when it comes to something like, hey, let me have a debate with the leading candidates on each ticket and sort of like a long, like a larger scale, but more moderated forum where you get all the people who are appearing on the ballots in the majority of states, you get them together to have a series of conversations. That was something that would not only garner eyes when it comes to just the media in terms of clippable moments they can put on social, but then also reveal people on the issues. Like I really appreciated watching Andy Kim not answer the question about reparations 3 times in a row and then started talking about the economy. It was so incredible to watch a man getting asked a question on I'm trying to like really drive this point home. The man was asked a direct question about reparations and he started talking about the economy and he said, people of color. It was crazy. and that's I appreciated that. I appreciated that Andy Kim didn't have an answer for reparations because then when I go like, okay, why are there reasons that I supported Larry Ham over Andy Kim? It was because Larry Ham had a concrete plan of reparations. He had a concrete plan of expanding the infrastructure bill to include hospitals, which was something that in my state in particular were ravaged during the pandemic, and a lot of them in important critical urban centers are closing. Andy Kim was asked this, and he basically said in a bunch of words, it wasn't a priority right now, that we ought to worry about winning the election. That's crazy to think in the face of making sure hospitals don't get closed down in critical cities, we have to worry about winning elections. That was
But if
The
she-
devil's
if
advocate here
Harris
for a
came
moment.
out if Harris came out in favor of reparations, I think we all would agree she'd lose the election instantly, right? Like
well, I mean, she doesn't support
whether or
it.
not you
Yes.
support the policy, it would be
She
losing
supported
the
it.
general election.
She supported it in an interview in 2019, which is one of the things was one of the reasons why I even bring it up because I think reparations is something that I don't support. I think it's an unserious sort of policy proposal. But leave that aside. I prefer someone affirmatively say that what I just said, like it's unserious, I don't support it, or I do support it, and here's why, than some mealy mouth answer like Joe's talking about with Andy Kim. Yeah, like have an answer for questions, even if you think the questions are stupid.
So
Yeah,
to
right.
devil's
And that's the point that I'm trying to make in terms of reparations, where like a lot of people would argue, I would rather argue unfoundedly that they are against it. And one of the problems is when I'm talking specifically about how Democrats argue reparations, I'm talking specifically in that vein. When they speak about those things and they speak towards that issue, it just leads to the same thing. They're in support of talking about it, they're in support of having committees, they're in support of research. But when it comes to, okay, what are some policies that relate around this plan of reparations? What do you go to? Who do you speak like what do you speak to? And again, the Jill Stein campaign articulated that clearly.
I
This is
guess
something that Larry Ham
well,
articulated
I'll
clearly.
just
And then even
yeah, I'll just be direct with this. Sure, she articulated it. She said something you totally agree with, or maybe not totally agree with, but you again, But I think that you made a important point, and to devil's advocate a bit, and I think Ryan made an important point as well. None of this matters if you don't win. Like, you could have the best crafted answer, go through all the policy you'd like, right, and be pitch perfect, have everything, all your ducks in a row, have a perfect plan. None of that matters if you don't win the election, right?
I would disagree. It's not.
Why?
It
Good answers are
depends
how you
on
win.
what. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? If this election comes out to a point where the
for one of the
Well,
two major
hold on,
party
let Joe
candidates.
finish. Let Joe finish,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
you can
yeah.
go.
Like
Go ahead, Joe.
let me frame it this way, right? If Democrats lose and the Green Party gets greater than 5% of the vote, then the Green Party won the day, flat out. That's a significant thing. Getting legitimacy within the electoral process through 5% is something that the Green Party can herald as an absolute win, because they're not looking to win the election. It's very clear about that. They're looking to reveal to people that there is a legitimate platform that people ought to go to. And that's a longer fight than trying to win the immediate. If you're trying to just worry about the immediacy of winning and losing when it comes to just whoever is in office, then obviously people are going to gravitate towards a Donald Trump, gravitate towards a Joe Biden. But if you're looking, like I mentioned in my opening, was that I am willing to, because I have the flexibility to advocate for the legitimacy of the third party, then I'll absolutely go green every time, especially when that Green Party is presenting policy of substance that I support.
The
Like
best.
that's where I'm
yes,
at
the
on that. Where it's like it's
best.
more about winning the day. If like it's okay to lose the battle if the day is won.
So
You know?
to kind of go with you and to really good faith what you're saying, and to kind of starman you a little bit or steelman you a little bit, I can see the argument that if you get 5% of the vote, or a large enough to matter in these close elections, that the policy positions that you have advocated for are demonstrably something that a good segment of the population, the voting population, want. And so parties, the duopoly, will start to take those policy positions seriously, and perhaps even adopt them and adjust their policy positions to matter, or to match them, or to emulate them in a certain way. I think that if you, where'd he go?
I think he popped out. I think he's gonna pop back in.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully he gets here soon. But I can see that argument. I can understand that argument. But the thing is, if the Green Party was to get 5% of the national vote, I would be shocked. I would be shocked. If I had to bet money on it, and I probably won't because I'm poor, right? And I've been wrong before. They ain't getting anywhere near. They're not even getting half that. Nationally.
Democrat leadership thought that the uncommitted movement was not going to be something of substance.
Has it been?
Yes.
They How so? Precisely.
It wasn't the primaries at the DNC. It didn't really show up. It's
no, but
what are we doing? The Kamala Harris coup thing, or what are we on right now?
No. It comes to what the legitimate plans are for those movements. And for the uncommitted movement, like, look, you can look at them as achieving 19% of the vote in Minnesota as a win. You can look at it in Hawaii, they got 29% for an uncommitted individual. They had delegates at the DNC. That's a significant win. That's a win
on the Democratic platform, on the Democratic Party platform. What positions that the uncommitted has advocated for? What positions have been adopted by the candidates of the Democratic Party?
Considering that we're only in phase 3 of the uncommitted movement's articulated campaign, I don't understand the question that you're asking. So let me just articulate phase 3, and maybe there would be a better question in there. So phase 3, let me go all the way back. So phase 1, they wanted to advocate within the presidential primaries using grassroots, basically the idea of like a multi-faith, multiracial, multi-generational network that could lead to awareness and inclusion on the ballot in a substantive manner. They won phase 1 and succeeded objectively. Phase 2 for them was preparing for basically for no better words to describe it, a pro-peace ceasefire narrative leading up to the DNC, and also, generally speaking, platforming and protecting the squad from obfuscation of their message. That's mixed because they lost Jamal Bowman, but when it comes to the core
And
squad,
Corey Brown, right? Corey Brown also got primaried out, I
yeah,
believe.
yeah. So it's like it's a mix. Depending on how you look at that, phase 2 was a mixture. Currently, they're in phase 3, which is the idea of basically carrying out the ceasefire anti-war message within the DNC and hoping to get a commitment with anti-war voters engaging in an election in November. And basically, they wanted to show up and show out in a way that showed that they existed. That is, I would argue, a mixture because sure, you had platforming of like the delegates got there, so there's that, but there was clear obfuscation within the DNC convention that was very heavily documented. There were protests and awareness outside of the convention, and within the convention proper there was a God, what do they call those? They had a talk within the convention itself that was part of
A
the
panel?
things that people can go to. Yeah, panel. So that was like again, like these are things that are important. Yeah, they're important. So I'd say for phase 3, it's also generally a mixture. And then phase 4 is basically where they start leaning into the deeper things of basically trying to create a more broader Arab American message and lining within Arab America, having like a more, how do they describe it? Because I talk to these people a lot, a more concrete, upfront Arab American agenda as it relates to Palestine and Gaza. Just so the clear with the
This
face.
conversation is just blackpilling me because I really, really want Harris to give like substantive, extemporaneous, concrete interviews where I get to know her better. And the more we talk about policy, the clearer it is why she's not doing it. So, like, because like
I mean,
this
she's
issue
taking
she
that
ran
position in
Well,
Israel.
let Ryan
Right.
finish. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Ryan.
She was talking
I
about the
still want to go
most
back to your
lethal
question, by the way,
military,
Wick. So
and
don't
the
forget.
reason is that taking a strong stance, either strongly pro-Israel or strongly pro-Gaza, on this particular issue is electoral poison for a Democrat. Like she ran to the center because that's where the votes are, and like. As much as I really want her to give these remarks, I guess I'm realizing as we go into this conversation, the reason she's not going to, because for every vote she'd get doing it, she'd lose 3.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so
I
let me.
think
Oh, sorry.
go for it, Glenn. You're good.
I was gonna say. I mean, she's already staked out position on Israel. It's like somewhat more to the right of what she was sort of hinting at before. Admittedly, like as a vice president who mostly just supports the president, whose president had a, I would say, middling policy on Israel to begin with. She's essentially, in that regard, kind of continuing the Biden stuff, maybe being in some ways a little bit more hawkish. At least the rhetoric, like that position is pretty decent. And like, I can't imagine anything outside of a really super cringe progressive person asking her pointed questions that would poke like significant holes in it. Like if she went on to any corporate or legacy media outlet to do an interview, they're going to ask her what her opinion is on the conflict. She's going to say something similar to what she said at the DNC, and that's going to be it. Like it's not going to be on that particular issue. I think she's fine. Similar to Russia, Ukraine, I think she's probably fine on there. I think foreign policy in general, as long as they don't ask her about something that she's not familiar with, and it's an Aleppo moment, I think she'll be okay.
Huh. I have doubts. I think that basically she's playing a game, and a game that I don't think anybody really wins. And that's basically she's trying to show the Democrats that she's more progressive and the Republicans that she is more conservative. And even when you look at her speech that she did at the conference, it was pretty jarring in really subtle ways. and in ways
can
where
you
it's
give us
like,
some? Oh, you're about to give us examples. I was going to ask for examples,
yeah,
please.
like I've never heard a Democrat want the most lethal military force and say that in a room full of other Dems, and then everybody cheering, and then it's like, we're not in the middle of a genocide right now. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro?
It was muted applause, to be fair, but I get you.
Hold on.
Yeah,
What else do you want
it's
the
a wild thing
military
to
to
say.
be other than lethal? It's like in some sense the most generic adjective
He
you can
has
give a
his
military.
normal progressive friends on Gaza. Let's not go there because it's going to derail the conversation. Go ahead,
Yeah,
John.
we're not here to
Finish
talk
up.
about
No, it's not
We're
even
not
a-
going to debate on the Israel-Gaza stuff right
Yeah,
now. But
please
I
not.
think
Please
that
let's not.
The point is, like, she's trying to do what Democrats, and again, this is not uncommon for Democrats to do. They lost the idea that they are Americans. So they've been trying to fight this idea that, well, actually, guys, we are Americans. You know, we want our military force to be lethal. We like cops. I promise you, we love cops. So they're I say that to say hyperbolically that they have been struggling with this idea that they're actually pro-America, pro-democracy, pro-American values, and they always have been
Right.
trying
True.
to work on that message. So it doesn't surprise me that Kamala Harris describes that she wants to have the most lethal military force. It's jarring when you take that statement and compare and put it juxtaposed to everything else that's going on internationally, where it's like,
go ahead.
okay, if we want to be the most lethal force, does that mean we're going to put troops in Ukraine? Does that mean we're going to put troops in Israel? So it's not that. So we don't care militarily about those people of substance enough to assist them in a way beyond giving them money. So what does it mean to be the most lethal force in the context of us being a political superpower? That's the thing I'm kind of interested in. She won't articulate that because she's a coward, but
so I understand what you're saying when it comes to you like a better explanation of what you mean. I don't think the Democratic Convention speech was the venue to go into specific details about the military and how she would support and use the American military might. Now, what you all have been saying, and which I agree with, and I've agreed with several times, that the venue to do that would be in interviews, on podcasts, with the media figures, CNN, Fox, etc. Right? Do the media tour. Be specific. Have your surrogates go out and be specific on, okay, when you say you want the American military to be the most lethal force, what do you mean? How do you mean it? Where are you going to use it? What do you plan to do? What are your red lines? What are your policies? What are your general prescriptions? What's your general overview of how you would use American military might? But when it comes to like a convention acceptance speech, I think it's very fine. And in fact, probably a better thing to just be like, I want America's military to be the most lethal, strongest force there is. So if we want to intervene somewhere, we can, right? And that's why I've always, and me and you, Joe, probably just disagree on this, which is fine. But I've always been someone who has been reticent for Democrats to be soft on the military, right? To kind of distance themselves from military and things like that. I think that by supporting the American military, you're supporting American freedom in a very real way and our ability to influence and to affect things on the world stage. The thing about military might is if you are strong enough, you don't have to actually use it. People will just not fuck with you because they know that if they do, you'll be in a traffic jam in Baghdad and a fucking sword missile will drop on you and kill only you.
But to be clear, when you offer red lines, you actually have to enforce it.
That's also true.
You can't do the Obama. You can't do the Obama thing. You can't do the Obama thing. But I get you. I think Democrats in general do have to thread this weird line, especially if they keep on this like we're the party of freedom and Reaganism. Like they're gonna have to thread this weird.
Well, you know
line
why they're doing that, right? They're doing that because there's been so many of the not Trumpers, right? Republicans who don't want
Joe
Trump,
Walsh types
who just don't want
That's a pitch
Trump.
to me.
Yeah,
that's a pitch to me specifically.
Jonah Goldberg and just I get you.
So I guess why isn't it working on you, Ryan? You mentioned that, but like, why isn't this working on you? Given that it is designed to appeal to you.
Can I make a characterization of you, Ryan? I want to respond and have you respond to it.
Oh, please.
It's because it's because I don't trust her. Like I don't actually believe that she is tacking center. I think that she understands that it is politically expedient to tack center. And the thing is, to your point, Wick, yeah, like I agree with you. A convention speech is not the time to get like bogged down in like wonky policy details. But typically, by the time you got to the convention speech, you're either an incumbent who we know really well, or you went through a primary process and we know who you are. This is a unique situation where she's getting on that stage and we really don't have a sense of who she is. And I don't know that, like, when she articulates a policy that I agree with, I don't know that
So you
that's
just
something
don't
that I
trust
can
her.
actually bank on.
You don't believe it when you
Yeah.
say. Fair enough. Joe, go ahead. Floor's yours a little bit. I'm
Okay.
curious.
I think it's time for me to throw a grenade.
Will it be a lethal grenade?
I think so. Look,
Okay.
if you are somebody who I'm gonna appeal a little bit to the communists and the burn America into the grounders. I think if that's something that you want to see, like the delegitimization of the United States, then I think Donald Trump is a no-brainer for you. I think Donald Trump is a no-brainer because the immediate threat that he has internationally will go untested. Like he'll wreck our he's going to wreck our economy in the middle and like long term of it. He'll definitely pull us into some shit in the Middle East. He'll definitely escalate military support in Taiwan. He will definitely lead to the result of like just tariffs fucking us, which is going to rock our currency. I think in the general, like there'll be a lot of death, a lot of ruined international relationships, and the US hegemon will be questioned by everybody else watching. Like they'll be able to see, and then what sucks about that is that Donald Trump will do this in 4 years, and then because he is a kingmaker, he only exists for as long as he is on this earth. So once he dies or fades into the political backdrop of not having the persistent threat of him running for reelection, he'll be able to slowly fade away and lose some influence while America's kind of just in flux due to the bullshit relationship losses and the mass death that he would cause.
So are you advocating for people to support Trump who are super on the left, who are anti-American?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Sound like that.
What are you talking
It sounds like that. It sounds like that. I'm saying I'm throwing a grenade here and just wondering what your thoughts are on the critique. Now, what the Harris campaign gives you is US hegemony without that clear, significant decline. Like we already know that we're losing our influence internationally at a very slow drip, but Kamala Harris will have the luxury and power to never have to deal with the consequences of the American hegemon deteriorating. Because when Ukraine inevitably is lost, she will have to appeal and make excuses to other people before her. She'll never take responsibility for that. She'll never take responsibility for the decline and loss of Ukraine. She'll never take responsibility for the loss and decline of Palestine. But she will be able to take responsibility of, hey, at the very least, she kept it a consistent drip and not a large drip. Because we know what's going to happen. Yeah.
That is better.
It depends on how you believe American hegemon and these people in these regions are. Like, okay. I don't think
this is literally the populist horseshoe right now. Like,
yeah,
this is literally the meme, right? Where we're talking about like,
I don't think it's
okay,
populism,
if you go
but
far enough down populism on either side, you get to the America should just stay in its borders, and who cares what happens anywhere else? It's going to be fine.
It's extremism. I wouldn't say it's populism, but I get you. What I'll say is this, right? Like, this is basically what I think Joe is articulating, and I'm not going to start him or try to like reinterpret his words. I'm just going to say, like, I think what he's pointing to is this thing that we've probably all, as overly online individuals, seen of like people on the progressive, super progressive, far left are comfortable in a weird sense with Trump being the face of America, because if you are a campist who does not like America and certainly does not like Pax Americana, then you want the American government to look bad, to be bad, and to ultimately be closer to some kind of disillusionment or some kind of grand reorganization that would support potentially more progressive and like quote unquote good or good think policies. And so in that way, like having someone like previously Hillary and currently Biden and potentially in the future, Kamala as the face of America, the government, and the sort of liberal Western order is a bad thing if you are a far left progressive because it puts that really nice lipstick on the pig that most people, especially normies, like, and they'll continue to go along with it, as opposed to having Donald Trump there, who's so brash and aggressive and awful that it'll make people think, hey, maybe we should burn it all down and start fresh. I think that's more or less what he's talking about.
Yeah, and to pin this a little bit, I'm not saying vote for Donald Trump. I'm not saying vote for Donald Trump, nor am I saying vote for Kamala Harris.
But you're wearing an orange shirt. Curious.
I'm aware.
Anyway, go ahead.
This is chocolate, but okay.
Wait, that's not orange. Am I blind?
It's your lighting.
I don't know
That's your
It's
lighting.
orange.
Yeah, that might be my lighting. Yeah,
Her face look orange too. To be
Uncle
fair.
Roger shit.
yeah.
What I'm saying.
How dare you? I'm not light skinned. Just kidding.
I know. Just saying, man. It's your lighting, man. It's your
I
lighting.
know. It's that tungsten. I say all that to say where it's like, look, if you are somebody who is a little bit more doomer, I understand the allure of a Trump presidency. And that is something from in my eyes of like, okay, if I say all that, which I believe is pretty close to being objective, that Donald Trump will agitate relations in Ukraine, agitate relations in Israel, agitate relations in Taiwan, and he'll go in a way that's very gauche and very abrasive, that's going to lead into significant loss of life internationally, then it's the duty of those who are aware of this to produce policy and argumentation that says like this way, our way is better, not that our way is better because this guy is bad. And that's where the sort of like vibes aspect of the Kamala campaign, the Harris campaign, excuse me, is that's where it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you're trying to analyze her. It's frustrating if you're trying to support her because you know that there's no substance, but then your only substance is vibes. And then you're stuck with arguing vibes where I think for somebody like Whick who wants to be a member, I mean, you're not the Harris's strongest soldier. I would say you are part of the vanguard of Democrat soldierdom. Hutch is like up there, so I don't think you'll ever be able to reach Hutch level. But and he's good people, by the way. This community is a little toxic, but good people. But I say that to
We're
say
making
that
this shit so complicated, man. It's not. I don't think it's that complicated. I think
Sure.
her strongest asset in a general election is not being Donald Trump. So when she pivots center, she's doing it because she knows there's people who don't like Donald Trump who have center-leaning politics, and she's saying, "Hey, jump on board the train. I'm going to do some center-leaning stuff." And I think if she can project that with her chest sincerely, I think she'll win. I don't know that she will, but like I think that I do expect that would be a winning strategy for her.
Well, that's I think what he is. He's articulating two different things. He's articulating why he doesn't like her, and also what he perceives as her as doing. What I would say is, he's already doing that. The way I've described her is she's making this weird Faustian bargain. Again, go to the Eric Quinn editorial, check out the article. I think it's a really good article. He's doing this weird Faustian bargain. It doesn't even seem Faustian because the bargain is vote for me and you can imprint whatever ideas you want onto who I am. It's even worse than Obama because like at least Obama was offering hope and change. He was selling you on something that was like phony and disingenuous, but he was at least selling you on an affirmative, if vague message. Her vague message is even vaguer than his.
I wanna jump in here because some words have been said and my name's been used. Okay, and I wanna talk a little bit about it because I wanted to make it clear why I am because I'll admit it. I want Harris to win. I want to see her be victorious in November. I think that she is the better choice. And while yes, there are things I do not like about Harris. The calculation and the reason why I'm doing this is because I do think that objectively, for all the reasons, Joe, you've outlined today, right? About how if Trump gets into office, he's going to agitate these things. It's going to be even worse. We're going to be destroyed on the world stage. The economy is going to be fucked up. for a long time in a lot of ways. We're going to have huge spikes in the wealth gap in both racially and on just a general scale as well. It's going to, at least I predict, be pretty bad. Now Kamala is not perfect, and I don't think that she's going to be perfect. I think she's going to make mistakes, but I don't see it as a bad thing to say, well, yes, these are the choices. If I don't vote Kamala, then I am making it more likely that all those bad things that I don't want to happen actually happen. So while I may hold my nose when doing it, I'm going to do it. And I think other people, again, assuming you share my values, assuming you also want what I want and don't want what I don't want, this is the action that you should take. This is going to, at least in this election, give us the best outcome we can possibly have. Because politics, my friends, is the art of the possible. And that's what's possible right now. Anyway, what do you say to that?
Respectfully, so how do you define, I mean, like, I hate to do this, I'm so sorry, but how do you define politics exactly?
Okay. When it comes
No.
in the context specifically of the presidential politics, I'm not talking about other politics. There are other actions that we can do. But me voting or not voting for president does not exclude me from doing any of these other actions that we should or should not do, right? Like, this is something that we can look at in the context of it itself. So no matter what my other political actions are down ballot or in my community, it is going to be helped and not hurt by voting for Kamala. For me, that might not be the same for you.
Yeah. So, like, the reason why I asked that is because I define politics as group competition over finite resources, and then the activities that encompass that competition. So I consider voting one of those things that makes up politics, but it's not politics on and of itself. And a concern that I have is that since I recognize that these are finite resources, a vote can't simultaneously go in support for one person but against another, because then that makes the entire process meaningless, and the idea of the resource itself meaningless, because I believe that a resource, in this case a vote, is something that can go towards in support of an individual, whether it be a individual or a ballot position, whatever you want to describe it electorally, but it does not mean that you are simultaneously voting against this other thing. It can only go in terms of support.
I don't.
So
Oh, okay.
because so because I believe that to be a finite resource, I kind of reject the idea that people who vote third party, people who leave it blank, are going against Kamala Harris,
Sure.
because then that would also mean that they're simultaneously going against Donald Trump. But that's not how resource allocation works.
If I may square this circle, because I think we just think about these things in a different manner. I don't see it as a resource. I see it as a chess move, right? So you have initiative in chess. You have the ability to make that move. Now you could choose not to make any move, but then the opponent just gets more moves to make, right? Or the people who don't support your cause get more moves to make. And again, this move isn't going to win me the game, but it is going to get me to a better position where the board is more favorable, so that when I do try to take my down ballot actions, when I do community organizing, when I do get involved in my school board and things like that, the board is in a more favorable position for me. So I see it as not as a resource so much as a move to make.
So I don't want to be nitpicky on analogies. I just don't think chess is the right activity to use to describe what you're saying. Because in chess, for those of you who don't know, not to get too nerdy, you have to make a move in chess. You can't pass. So you have to make some type of action. And I think that something that might be more analogous in terms of using the chess analogy is that there's a lot of people who make the unconscious action, which I think is just as dangerous as passing, where I think that there are people, especially Democrats, who look at Joe Biden, how dare I, Kamala Harris, who look at Kamala Harris, who look at Donald Trump and think that a move has to be made in order to push forth what I want, when I would argue, which I tried to argue in the beginning, is that you have to, for lack of a better term, understand the processes better.
No,
Where
if you're
not
arguing for
every-
better, like for people to be more informed, to make more informed choices, we don't disagree.
It's not even more informed choices. It's just having a more informed politic, where there's still people who, not necessarily, because then I consider voting one aspect of so many other things that you can do. And one of my concerns is that people consider voting as the be all end all to any action that you can do.
Sure.
So, like, for instance, I advocate
on that, if you don't
for,
mind.
yeah, absolutely. Like, I'll pin it too. Like for instance, I support students being able to, well, not students, just people being able to vote at 16. And then people go, well, that's ridiculous. And then I go, well, there's multiple school boards all across the country right now who are advocating for, at least at the very least in the next school year, having it so that students up to age 16 can vote for school board members. So we trust 16-year-olds to vote for school board members, but we don't trust 16-year-olds to vote in elections broadly. So there's a contradiction there. And their argumentation for that is terrible, where it's like, and that's where I think, where it's like, okay, the politics of somebody advocating for change in their school, we saw what that looks like in the face of Sandy Hook, no matter how you lean about that, because none of them niggas could vote. It's like, so they had to engage in the, I know I did, I'm sorry.
Look,
you had to engage in the political process.
I'll give you the pass, buddy. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah,
We're deep in, the algorithm will find you.
Yeah,
exactly.
We saw in real time that, okay, what happens when you're not able to vote and there's an issue? Like, we had the answer to that, which was mass political organization, mass political grassroots organizing. And then in the face of that organization led to different policy prescriptions and changes, albeit not all of them I agreed upon, but it showed that, okay, electoralism is one aspect of this activity of politics, but there's so many other ventures that you can explore. So I don't want to see people go, I'm not voting. And not only am I not voting, I'm not organizing. I'm not trying to do anything in terms of the other things of politics, because I only see voting as the only option. You know what I'm saying?
I think that most people who don't vote do that, and I'll let you go in a second here, Quinn. But I think that that's the state where most people who don't go to the polls on election day or on the every 2 years or even on direct ballot initiatives that sometimes come off in other times, right? Or vote in their school board elections. I just don't think they organize at all. I don't think they just engage with politics. I think that the people who engage with organizing and making those things, but also don't vote, are very, very rare. Very, very rare.
Okay. May I just, so firstly, I'll answer the original question, or the question that was from like maybe 10, 20 minutes ago, of like, what is politics? I define politics as civics mixed with power games, mixed with debate, or broadly discourse. And I think discourse is often cringe. Debate on the internet often is cringe. I include live streams in that, no offense, Whick. And so like the issue with politics is that there's a lot of people who do it badly. And you just call out one thing, for, not in a bad way, but like, Joe, you keep using this term electoralism, and maybe that just goes to sort of your worldview. But I would just say, for a lot of people who either don't know what that word means or might think you're talking strictly just about voting, because in practice you're talking about voting. What you're, I think, talking about is a kind of like voting as praxis because we live in a authoritarian society. Blah, blah, blah. Broadly speaking, the franchise has been a part of society for a long time. We're not doing electoralism in America. We're doing democracy. We're doing representative democracy. But anyway, so people can look, go Wikipedia that later. But just what you mean is democracy. Okay. I think democracy is based, but I don't think that democracy is the be-all, end-all. Again, civics, right? Politics is civics. This includes, but it's not limited to, democracy. The actual discourse, which is the talking about the thing, and the power games, including the sort of workings of government. And it's all of those. So if a regular citizen member, wants to do politics They should be engaging at minimum in civics, and that's voting, that's some level of understanding what it means to be a citizen, to be a member of their community, to go to school boards, or to like know and care about the issues that are relevant to their lives. Again, think about your governors, your mayors, your representatives, your local state charters, and state assemblies that are not the federal ones. That's civics. That's based. And people should be more engaged in civics. They should leave a lot of the politics, quote unquote, meaning the discourse and other stuff, to talking heads and internet weirdos like us. Because A, they're not good at it most of the time. And B, it's really not fruitful. That's my view on it.
I think there's an important point in there that's one I want to highlight. And this is
once
at
you
the
go,
risk
though,
of,
we're gonna move to closing statements because it's
Okay.
like 8 o'clock. But go ahead, Ryan.
At the risk of going federal society here, we've reached a point in our politics where we have both a two-party system and we're talking about presidential politics. We have a federal government that is involved in everything on a day-to-day level these days. And in a country this big, I very much doubt that if you have a menu of 2 options and the topic is what is best for everything, that you actually can give policy prescriptions in a way that's not going to alienate people. And part of that, one of the root causes there is the two-party system. One of the root causes is the federal government is just doing too much. And to the point that Quinn was making, if more of these decisions were made locally, and if we were focusing more on local governments, some of the pressure would be taken off national campaigns to have to speak to every issue under the sun. Some of them are national and would have to be spoken to. But a lot of this stuff that we're talking about could be localized. Anyway, sorry. I know you got to move on.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
We have had, and I hate to cut this conversation short, but we went way too long yesterday, and I starved to death. I'm the ghost of Whick that is talking.
Wick needs
right
his
now.
nuggies.
I do actually, and I just got some personal shit I gotta take care of. But I love you all. I thank you for coming. I want to give each of you closing thoughts on this. If you've enjoyed this discussion, like I said, it wasn't so much a debate. I went for more of a talk, a discussion panel on this. If you enjoy that kind of content, please like the channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, throw me some subs, throw me some bits, throw me some money, some super chats. All this helps the channel out. I would appreciate it, and thank you. Tomorrow I might be debating Drone Tech Media on the Arlington Cemetery stuff, but I don't know. He has to confirm, and he's very bad at confirming. I might just go live and just take callers about it because I know some of you disagree with me. But anyway, I'm going to give each of these individuals the microphone, and I want them to articulate who they are, where you can find them, and then, my dear Wickers, my viewers, I want you to go, and I want you to click on their links, and I want you to follow them. I want you to give them subs as well. I want you to give them attention, okay? That's what I want you to do. But here, we're going to give it to Quinn first, so we're going to end with Joe. Quinn, closing thoughts.
Appreciate that. And I would agree with everything Wick just said. Give him money, give me money. And please follow everybody that you see on the screen. I mean that. Even though I don't disagree, I do disagree with some people and some views here. I think that in general, we are trying to do this thing I talked about earlier of politics pretty well in ways that are not cringe. For my part, I am Quinn, also known as Edo Quinn, EDOKWIN, on all platforms, primarily Twitter and Substack. I write and run the Edo Quinn editorial. I have an article that I'm working on that is not related to politics, actually. It's related to the greatest writers that are living today, but it's taking forever to work on because it is hard work. My current article is about the election itself. It's called The Vibe Election. You can check that out. Please do follow me, not because I want a random number next to my name. I couldn't care less. I want you to engage with the content. Even if you want to just tell me I'm retarded, please go ahead and do that because I want the debate. I want the discussion. So, yeah, please follow me. Please follow that guy. Please follow that guy. Please follow that guy.
Get your DMs ready. He said you can call him retarded. Get ready, gang. Start those engines. Let's go. No, thank you for going here. I really appreciate you being here. Give him some attention. Thank you for your contribution today. Ryan, please.
calling people retarded is the primary function of X, so I think that's going to work out for you. Yeah, I publish articles on X periodically. You can follow me at Ryan C. Mullally, Mullally. I cover law, education, politics, and increasingly religious philosophy. So that was kind of a curveball, but that's where I'm at, and often parenting, but a wide smorgasbord of stuff. And if I was going to leave you guys with something which has been on my mind recently, probably the next article that I'm planning on writing, it would be this. How different would this conversation be if more states followed the example of Maine and Nebraska and didn't give all the electors to a winner take all? Because that isn't a fault of the Electoral College. That is a decision by states. They can do it differently. And I think our presidential politics would feel very different if we weren't in a winner take all situation, which is 100% the result of the party that is in power in a state making the obvious and clear political decision. Why would we give any electors to the other team? So it's I don't know that it's going to change, but if it did, that would probably be something that moved the needle.
Check him out, gang. And that is an interesting thought. I have not considered it terribly much, but it on first blush, it seems like a pretty good idea. Check him out, gang. Thanks for being here. I do appreciate your contribution. Thank you.
It doesn't require a constitutional amendment, so there's one more point in its favor.
Last but certainly not least, Joe Lewis.
Yeah, listen, as for those of you who don't know who I am, I guess you'd say, an OG at this point. I've been in the panel circuit since it sort of hit the rise in 2019 or so. Most people know me through my appearances, for better or worse, on the Hippy Dippy podcast and also, or panel rather, and then on Prime Kai's All Black Everything. So that mostly is the introduction that people have for me. And if you watched me during those 3 to 4 years, I'm terribly sorry. So, because a lot of the opinions and perspectives that I held and even argued were arguably not proper representations of what I actually believe. And a lot of my political identity got wrapped up into the entrepreneurial personal power dynamic that comes with content creation. So something that I'm trying to do moving forward is, because one, I'm so jaded on streaming and so jaded towards streamers, that I recognize that, hey, there's a better path to having conversation. There's a better path to discussion. So I really appreciate the back and forth of that. And I understand that even doing some pushes on calling Kamala Harris a white lady might invoke certain responses to individuals who knew me in the before days of that sort of like cringy moment stuff. I just want you guys to know that if you see me making jokes, it's now just to have a little bit of fun, to create some respite in the conversation, because I do know these things are boring. I say all that to say, I'm sorry it's a little bit long-winded. I want to kind of like do that to sort of clear the air in terms of context of like how I'm discussing moving forward, because I do recognize it's drastically different than how to engage in discourse and Discord and on Twitter. So like there's a big difference in how I do these things. A book that really got me inspired into a better understanding politically was from Lester Spence, and it's called Knocking the Hustle. And within that, he argues that politics in the current state of affairs, they describe as like a neoliberalism approach, prioritizes three things: individualism, market logic, and then a reduction of collective political action in the favor of entrepreneurship and personal success. And I think that the Kamala Harris campaign and the Donald Trump campaign are just continuations of that. The continuation of individualism, the continuation of the reduction of a collective political action towards long-term goals, and then just the in favor of personal success and entrepreneurship. And I think that for me, as this current state, I can't see what's happening with these two campaigns and support them in either stretch of the imagination. I can, however, support Jill Stein because she's articulated that this is not about her, the individual. She understands that there's got to be someone on the ticket. So it happens to be me. So the entrepreneurship and personal individualism is not reflective in that campaign. There's also policies that I support of hers. But I do think that we ought to have more discussions about these things and better engagement within the discourse and debate. And I think that my hope is that conversations like this and continual just knocking at the door and people pushing out content can lead towards just a better overall perspective on these things. So I do appreciate, as much as I get frustrated on these panels from time to time, I have appreciated the past few appearances I have been here, and I hope that people got something good out of that. And if you want to just pick my brain or argue, I'm in Wick's Discord a lot. Name's my name, Joe Lewis. You can tag me if there's something you want to know more about. And then on Twitter and Twitch, it's Joe Lewis with 2 O's. So JOOELEWIS. Sorry for that long-winded answer. I know, like, usually this is the part where I disappear for 3 months and I'm on the panel again. So I just want to spend some time on that. But thank you again for the invite, Wick. And thanks again, Quinn and Ryan.
I forgot Chase Oliver. Please look up and vote for Chase Oliver because he.
You had your closing statement, sir. You could have done it then. Gang, I gotta go. I'm hungry. I'm gonna probably go to McDonald's, actually. I love you all. We're gonna raid into Prime Kai. Remember to tell him that this is a hate raid, okay? And I want you to be very clear about that. No, we love Prime Kai. He's a great guy. But yeah, I'll see you guys later. Well, bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Well, I'll see y'all soon, okay?
Bye.
Okay. Enjoy your whatever, Wick. Sorry.
Enjoy my whatever. I will try.
Yeah. Have a good.
Yeah, you too.